Hello and welcome everybody back once again to another Community World Challenge here at SimGrid. I'm Mike Noss, joined alongside me tonight, John Dalton, for one of the most amazing races of the year, with not just one, not just two, but John, 20 different communities all taking to the track tonight here in New South Wales.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Good evening, everyone. And what a treat we do have here tonight at one of the most iconic tracks in motorsport, of course, Mount Panorama, with 20 of SimGrid's finest communities battling out here in the SRO Esports Community World Challenge. And we're in for a fantastic showcase of skill and strategy tonight. And this circuit demands respect, of course, with the big concrete walls over the mountain and the caliber of drivers on the grid tonight. I think we can expect nothing less than thrilling action and some very close battles. But let's see who can tame the mountain and rise to the top tonight, Mike.
The mountain giveth and the mountain taketh away, a saying as old as time, and we're going to be seeing that in play tonight with, again, as I mentioned, 20 different communities, 40 different drivers, 2 drivers per community representing absolutely every single one of these. And if we can see on our screens very shortly, at the very bottom, you can see all of the lovely community names, starting us off with the ACC Career Mode. We also have the Track.eu, SOP Motorsports, Amigos Racing League, Jardier Community, ACC GT, QRT Esports, Harkira Racing, as well as Noobs R Us, SimSport Racing International, Toga Motorsports, SPQR ASD, Lightspeed Racing, 2S Community, Onid Community Racing, Raceface.pro, Dynamic Community Formula Racing League, Trackalicious from where I am from, and the Odyssey Racing League as well. All of the names that you can see on screen right now. And of course, we have our wonderful hosts here with SimGrid, AK Esports UK, powered as well by SRO Motorsports, and of course, Fanatec powering SRO. And we are here on the ACC platform, the Assetto Corsa Competizione, one of the best GT racing, if not, heck, one of the best GT racing platform absolutely out there. And with all of course, the bustling news in the AC world, we are here tonight for Bathurst. Again, one of the tracks that's been around as old as time itself, or well, John, I guess it's been around since about 1938, 3.8 miles, 6.2 kilometers. And why don't you talk about just the difficulty that is ahead of these drivers here tonight?
Yeah, it's such a challenging circuit, isn't it, Mike? We alluded to earlier, of course, the concrete walls as you head up through Griffin's Bend and begin the climb up through the cutting, of course, over the top of the mountain through Suleiman Park. Very brave section of consecutive corners towards Skyline, of course, dropping down through the S's into the Cascades of the Dipper before we, of course, reach Forest Elbow, and then the big long run down the Conrod Straight. Lots of course, different manufacturers on the grid tonight, which again nets themselves different properties towards the circuit. So where we might see, the Fords quite strong in a straight line coming over the mountain, you might see trains of cars beginning to back up, itching and edging to try and get past them before the start finish line. And Bathurst, of course, 571 feet of vertical difference. That's 174 meters between the highest and the lowest points of the circuit. So it's quite a kind of sheer drop once you do become kind of down the back end of the lap. And technically deemed a street circuit, of course, due to the venue being a public road when events aren't being hosted, with a very strict 60 km/h speed limit. That's 37 miles an hour if you're across my side of the pond. And of course, the New South Wales Police patrol quite regularly here. As you can imagine, Mike, lots of people may be wanting to take it from the sim to the real world. And we're going to see speeds of much more than 60 km/h here tonight.
Yes, we certainly will, as that's basically the slow motion driving from what we are, of course, used to with the GT cars. And this track, as you mentioned, just an absolute classic. It is a road circuit or a street circuit by every definition of the track, but it's been around, as I mentioned, for a very, very long time. The circuit has played host to plenty of racing throughout the years, ever since, of course, 1938, where it was founded. And the first ever race held here was held with not just cars, it was held with the Australian class of trophy cars as well as different MGs, Rileys, Bugattis. But of course, the big notable thing out on circuit is the fact that not only did they just have race cars, they had motorcycles taking to the track as cars at the same time for the first race ever in New South Wales, which of course, I don't know, I guess the Australians, John, they're just built a little bit differently, might you say?
Yeah, certainly built differently. If they think this is, a kind of thing that they want to race around, especially in the early days, of course, flip back to, England. A lot of our circuits are kind of, ex-airfields that were raced on back in the day and then been converted into these modern day venues. But this essentially a public road. As you can see, walls are everywhere here. There's very little runoff, very little room for mistakes. So the stakes are quite high here today for all drivers involved, and having an off is something you don't want to be doing across a 90-minute race, as of course that will lead to time loss and crucially track position lost as well. Just casting back to what you were saying, Mike, of course, lots of different things have been kind of raced here over the years, but more popularly in the modern day, of course, V8 Supercars and the, of course, GT3 GT World Challenge. The lap record 201.5 is held by Shane van Gisbergen in a 650S, but you may remember earlier in 2024 when, of course, Jules Gounon in an unrestricted and modified Mercedes AMG GT3 managed to nail a 156.6. So we'll see how close our drivers can get to that time in one of these three qualifying sessions that we do have here before we do get underway in about half an hour's time or so.
Yeah, and that's absolutely insane. The lap times that you're going to be expecting here tonight, pretty much down into the 159s. We might see a couple drivers getting into the 58s. I'd be surprised. One of the things that I haven't quite mentioned just yet, or we haven't at all, is the fact that we have 3 mandatory pit stops over the course of a 90-minute race for these drivers to take part in over the night here tonight. And that will add a bit of interest in terms of strategy, of course, because drivers maybe starting further to the back are going to be electing for that early pit stop, lap 1, maybe just come in for a no set of tires, no set of fuel just yet, and then run that tank pretty much down to the end. With a 90-minute race, you have no choice. There isn't a single car that can make it all the way on fuel, so you're going to have to take a refuel at some point. But with the crazy weather conditions that we are expecting tonight, it could be dry 1 minute, it could be pouring down rain, thunder and lightning the next, and then back to dry. To be honest, John, we really just don't know at this point.
Yeah, weather will play a big part in that strategy that drivers do elect to take. Of course, as you said, 3 mandatory pit stops to clear over 90 minutes of racing. So, I mean, up to you how you want to do that, whether you want to run the hour, you want to run the half an hour, you want to split it down 45 minutes, you want to, like you say, Mike, come in a bit early, pull yourself out of the traffic and the train and try and find some clear air to really get those consistent lap times in. It's completely up to the drivers, and no rules on tire changing, as you said, no rules on refueling, and no rules on the maximum stint timer either. So that does blow it completely wide open, Mike, because we normally see in these kind of events, of course, the 65-minute or the 60-minute stint timer for drivers, which essentially forces them into the pit lane. But none of that here tonight. It's completely wide open, and I think it's going to make for some very interesting calls amongst our teams tonight.
Yeah, and that's if the track stays dry, which I think most drivers are not expecting it to be dry whatsoever. I was talking with Ollie Raza and Andy Borchers right before the broadcast, and they were mentioning the fact that everybody in the server was complaining because for the past week, they've been on the practice server, and it's been showing wet condition after wet condition, just pouring down rain, sopping wet. And they get onto the server 2 hours before the race today, and it's just bone dry. So all of the setup work that these drivers have put in through the past week, and then they get into the server, and it kind of throws a wrench into the air and saying, well, okay, do we have our right strategy? Did we maybe gamble too much on the wet and are going to be facing more dry conditions? Here at the mountain, it's very crucial to get your setup correct if you want to maximize your lap time, John, because of just how twisty, tight, and windy at the top of the circuit is. And with the walls never far away, it's very easy to find yourself with an unscheduled pit stop.
Absolutely, Mike. And we alluded to earlier, of course, the different nature of the cars that are on the field with us tonight. So, do you want to try and combat the Mustang straight line speed and maybe dial some wing out of the cars and make your car a little bit slipperier when you get to the Conrod? Or do you want to kind of go the other route and, of course, put maximum grip into the car, make the car really sticky over the mountain, but then you risk running into somebody that's maybe made a different strategy call on their car setup? It's completely kind of wide open to interpretation on that one, and I'm sure we'll be seeing in the qualifying session which driver has elected for kind of which way to go on the setup. Do you go for a much drier setup like you said, or do you go for that bit of a hybrid one to try and if it does rain, then you can sort of gain the time back as we jump into qualifying? The pit lane looking very chaotic as all the drivers filter out onto the circuit, Mike.
Indeed, and this is going to be the start of Q1, so we have a bit of different qualifying for tonight in terms of format. Maybe a little bit different if you're used to the GT variant, but not so different if you are a fan of Formula One and their qualifying style. We have a Q1, a Q2, and a Q3 tonight, where all 40 drivers are going to be participating in Q1. The top 25 will progress into Q2, where they will battle it out for the next session, and then the final 10 drivers will get down to it and have a little dance out on circuit for the final qualifying 3 that will be a little bit later on. And of course, again, the top 10 making it into Q3. So qualifying, John, is going to be crucial at a track here like Bathurst.
It's very crucial indeed, isn't it? It's like, we alluded to earlier, Bathurst is technically a street circuit, and we know, Monaco on the calendar of the prestigious series in the real world, very important to qualify at Monaco. It's so hard to get past people. Maybe a little bit easier here at Bathurst, of course, the less tight nature. Once you drop off the mountain, the Conrod opens up. You get a good passing slingshot down here into the chase where Nico Dobos is at the moment, and he leads the train on the outlap. We're going to see lots of drivers probably beginning to stack up here, try and find some space, because 40 drivers over a 2-minute lap, everybody is going to be vying for that kind of little sniff of clear air just to get the maximum performance out of the car. You can already see drivers weaving, trying to get as much temperature into the tires as possible as we begin to ride on board with the number 60 representing the Toga Motorsports community. So through turn 1, this is where we begin the climb, of course, up Mountain Straight. It's an uphill section, crucial to get a good exit out of turn 1 as we head up to turn 2. Of course, a slow run, you'll soon see your opponents sailing past you. An uphill braking zone here. Brake a lot later than you expect and use the camber of the road to suck the car through the inside line and push the limits all the way up to the walls here, already coming into the cutting. It's a tricky corner to get right in a mid to rear engine car, but very easy in a front engine as you throw the weight forward, get the turn and get the bite really good over that front axle. Now over the mountain, flat out. Normally in qualifying trim, a little lift, maybe in race trim with a full tank of fuel as we head through the consecutive left-hand bends on the run up towards Skyline, down the compression. Be careful of the inside curb. Again, the exit curb can sting quite harshly as we come over the mountain, and a downhill braking zone cascading right to left, and back on yourself once again as you scrub speed off down the S's into the dipper before we get eventually to Forest Elbow. Again, another corner you've got to get a good run out of because it's a super long run as we head down the Conrod Straight towards the chase. This is where we're going to see lots of slipstreaming happening, maybe teams working together, maybe pushing each other down the Conrod if they find themselves in a train of cars. But again, a very risky strategy in ACC. Flat out into the chase we go. A very hard braking zone here. Pick your point right too early and you'll find your opponent a bit braver will be on the inside of you, and 2 into 1 here certainly doesn't go. Out of the chase, under the Liqui Moly Bridge we go towards the final turn that is Murray's. Again, it's a short run to the finish line here, so it's almost good if you overcook the corner. You don't often lose a lot of time, and the first time on the board was a 1:59.785, immediately bested by the Bentley behind of Philip Brewster with a 1:59.5, and everybody, Mike, is vying for space with only just under 8 minutes on the clock to go. It's going to be crucial to get this early lap in and get a good early lap on the board, I would say, at this stage.
Absolutely, and 43 thousandths of a second separating our top three currently, and now with Kamil Pawlowski coming to the line in the McLaren Evo 2, he sets it alight now with a new fastest lap. Jaroslav Honzik behind. That's of course going to be Jardier in the Honda NSX in second position right now with a 59.3. Sam Gaskell lighting the time charts up as well with a 59.315. That is just 20 thousandths slower. But Adam Spansky coming in and really getting in a good lap. A 59.1. I said we might expect to see 58s tonight, John. Heck, we might even see 57s by the end of Q1.
Looking very quick in the early stages. Spansky with the 159.1, nearly into the 158s. And that's on, you know, like what we would call an installation lap almost. You know, you're still getting the Pirellis into that operating window. You're still bringing them up to pressure. Fuel load is, you know, low, but it's not the lowest it could be in one of these sessions. So still more time on the board, I would say, for the Polish driver. As we watch Honzik, his teammate, coming down through the S's. A little bit of traffic ahead, but I don't think that's going to affect him all too much as he comes out on towards the Conrad. Again, traffic could sometimes, Mike, be a blessing on a qualifying run if, you know, you're coming down the Conrad and the other driver is feeling particularly nice or maybe not up on his lap, could yield to you and you get that, you know, ideal slingshot that kind of everybody wants as they come down into the chase.
Yeah, that's the hope that these drivers are going to be lining up. It can be a bit more of a difficult song and dance when you get down to it, but this is going to be very helpful for Yaroslav coming down the back stretch now and into the chase, getting onto the brakes. He's just out of range of dirty air, but sort of just in range enough to get a bit of slipstream. Up on his lap now and into the final corner, just needs to remain on the gun and down into Murray's now, late onto the brakes. The Honda NSX, it's been a while since we've seen it at the top of the time charts. Are we going to see it there now? Yaroslav comes across the line. It's enough for a P3, about a blink of an eye off of pole position. That's about 2.5 tenths.
Yeah, Pawlowski coming through as well, up into the front row of the grid. Dylan Tan sneaking in with a 158.9, the first of the drivers to hit the 58s, and his teammate here, Maulana, coming through the chase towards the end of their lap, looking pretty good through the first couple of sectors so far as they come up towards Murray's corner. It's the final kind of undoing of the lap almost if you do get it wrong, and looks like to carry good speed through. And Maulana to the line up into P5, not too far behind his teammate. So this could be good for the race if it, you know, stays this way through the next couple of qualifying sessions. As Mike alluded to earlier, 3 qualifying sessions here tonight, with the first one with just 12 minutes on the clock for all 40 drivers. The top 25 then get themselves into qualifying 2, which is slightly shorter, 10 minutes on the clock, and then we whittle those guys down to the top 10 for qualifying 3, and that's only 8 minutes to get a lap in, Mike. So time is going to be of the essence, getting off the lane speedily in Q3 to try and maximize all the laps you can. Martin Lawrence to the line in the number 171 Bentley, up into the top 10 just behind Chris Warner. That's a very good time indeed, and the Bentley, Mike, takes a while to get into the ideal operating temperature window on those tires, so I'd expect a little bit more pace maybe out of Martin Lawrence in the next 4 minutes.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I will say, seeing the Bentleys, seeing the amount of Hondas as well that are out on the grid, talking about just manufacturer diversity. There's only 1 McLaren in the top 5, 2 in the top 10. And there's more Honda NSXs than there are Fords and McLarens combined, really, in the top 10, which, again, is something that you just do not see. This, though, is something you get to see quite often. Sam Gaskell wringing the neck of the car that he is driving, and as he comes down into the final corner complex right now, he's 2 and a bit tenths off the ball. We'll call it 3 tenths for good measure. Sam Gaskell, he doesn't really care, though. As he comes to the line, he's going to go 4 tenths faster and be an entire 10th quicker than Dylan Tan and take the pole position at a 158.8 for the time being here in Q1 or Q3. Yes, 1.
Q1 indeed, getting a bit ahead of ourselves already. We just want to get this race underway already. But a big wiggle from Maulana out of the last corner up into P4. He goes pulling over to the left-hand side. It'll be a quick trip back to pit lane, reduce fuel load, a new set of Pirellis, and back out they'll go to see if they can try and itch any more time off that one. But I mean, being this far into the top 25, Mike, do you really want to, you know, risk it at this point to go out again? It's, you know, you're cemented, shall I say, quite safely, I would say, in at least the top 10 to 15 positions. You've only really got to worry if you're down the kind of bottom end of the top 20 on being eliminated, as traffic's looking very thick at the last corner.
Yeah, but there are some drivers that have not set a lap time in which I would expect from them. Some of those drivers down in towards the bottom positions. Kieran Pendergast down in 36 with a 2 minutes point 3. It's incredible to say that that is a fourth to last positioned lap time. Still not quite into the 59s though just yet. Ollie Raza with a 2 minute point 0. I'd expect a little bit more time out of them as well. Sigurd Revsik, another name, at a 159.8 right now with Sean Tempest alongside. Those are two drivers that I also could expect to gain. So all in all, I'd say that you might as well go out right now. You have a lot of drivers hunting for the top 25, and there are a lot of drivers that certainly have the talent to do so. So I don't think that anybody, barring the top 10, are really that safe.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a very competitive field, isn't it? And this man on your screen at the moment, Samir Foch, somebody again that we wouldn't normally expect to see down the bottom end of the field. So definitely some time in the 888 QRT Esports Mustang as they cross over the top of the mountain. There's a Bentley ahead, the Honda behind on their outlap. So they're going to be building a gap to the back of that Mustang, so no real worry for Samir to watch in his mirrors. He can focus truly out of the windscreen at the Bentley, snaking through the S's just ahead of him. A couple of yellow flags out on the circuit, of course. Drivers coming back to the pit lane with a minute on the clock. It's going to be touch and go whether they can make it towards the start-finish line to get another lap. And Symphony of Pistons just ahead there, Mike, look like they could be working together down the Conrod there. The Aston leading the BMW, maybe punching a hole in the air, trying to propel some more seconds into the lap for Revsik to get him out of that top 25 drop zone.
Definitely looks to be the case. Now the question is, are we going to see that Aston get out of the way though? And it doesn't seem like quite they did. But either way, it's still going to be a very, very welcome helping hand right now for Sigurd Revsik. And every single thousandth matters when you're in the times right now. And when you look at it, he's just 10 thousandths behind Ollie Raza. He manages to get into the top 25, but it's only just. Is that going to be out of the cutoff window? I'm not sure. We're looking down at Victor Abramov as well as Henry Mayer here, who has a chance for improvement sitting down in 32nd. He is going to be one of the next drivers to cross the line.
Yeah, looking good already through the first half of the lap. Of course, checkered flag is out, so drivers are eligible to finish any lap they've started. No new laps may be began as Mayer comes towards the line up into P26, just missing out on the top 25. And it's such a small margin here, Mike, of course, when we throw all these guys together, the tops of their, communities that were either elected, pre-qualified, however they made it here. Of course, that was up to the communities on how they gauged their lineups for this event. They're all very quick in their own right, and it gets so competitive. Like we say, we've got the top kind of nearly top 30 covered by just over a second. And when you get into a race scenario, that's going to be condensed down even more, of course, with dirty air, slipstream, and again, people battling. It's going to be very competitive and very close here today as the number 34 of Nico Handke finishes his lap. The Amigos Racing Team does make it inside to the drop zone. That's in the 25th. So he will go through to Q2, a very late lap there, but still managed to do it nonetheless. And Q2, of course, coming up in just a moment. 10 minutes on the clock. 25 drivers, of course, down from the 40 that we just saw in Q1. So track space, Mike, is going to be a little bit nicer this time by. It's probably going to feel a bit less panicky, but you're still going to have to choose your time and build that gap on your outlap.
Yeah, 25 drivers is still 25 drivers on circuit. There's not going to be much room. I mean, we obviously, if you made it through with 40, there will be enough. It is a 3.8 mile or 6.2 kilometer circuit with one of the longest tracks on the GT calendar. It has 23 corners, 14 to the left and 9 to the right, and you need to make sure that you have a good gap to the car in front. That way you're not picking up any dirty air on the mountain sector, as it's very easy to understeer on through McPhillamy Park and down towards Skyline and in the infamous Dipper, where of course so many races have found their conclusion down in that part of the track. And tonight, you know, I wouldn't expect it to be that much different. Obviously, we have an esports talent in the for a lot of the drivers out there, very, very talented. But at the end of the day, I'm still thinking about the weather conditions and what exactly we're going to see when we do hit the race after the next two qualifyings. And to be fair, with that said, the qualifyings are kind of up in the air as well when it comes to the weather, and just to see exactly what's going to happen, because if it rains, I have no idea. I mean, that's going to throw such a monkey wrench into the equation, and of course, we know the rain as the great equalizer.
Yeah, rain's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? You know, sometimes it draws out people that you wouldn't necessarily kind of put your money on in a betting scenario to be up in the mix of it, but, you know, it draws that kind of random factor into the race. And you know, it's all very well practicing in ideal conditions, you know, perfect clear skies and ideal track temperatures, but when you get down to it, you know, it's who has practiced, like you say, in these mixed conditions. And like you said, some drivers obviously stating every time they joined the practice server it was a little bit different than the last time they joined. So whoever's done the most practice, should we say, or the most kind of research, it's going to certainly prove to be the kind of crucial thing today, and it will separate the men from the boys, as they say.
It certainly will, and I am absolutely looking forward to it. There's the Liqui Moly board done on the start-finish straight. We're going to be getting into the action very, very soon here, as qualifying is going to be resuming with 10 minutes on the clock. And the drivers, the top 25 drivers, all are going to be fighting it out amongst each other to try to make it down into Q1. The elimination window for the next bit of quali is the top 10. So the drivers looking to make it into the top 10 fastest. We take a look at the qualifying window in the previous session, and in order to be within the top 10, less than half a second is separating them, John. Just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's such a small window, isn't it? You know, if me and you met up somewhere, Mike, and we arrived half a second apart from each other, we'd say, you know, we practically arrived at the same time. But half a second across a 90-minute race, that soon adds up to be quite a large gap by the time the checker flag drops. So every driver is going to have to be pushing that envelope so much tonight just to try and close these gaps up. Of course, 0.5 is the kind of slipstream window that we see in ACC. It's around 0.5, 0.6 before people begin to benefit, as all the drivers, of course, still on their out laps. This is live pictures from qualifying 2, and the number 25 of Philip Brewster this time at the head of the field. Dobos still got out relatively quickly, just behind in the yellow Aston Martin, but Philip Brewster for the Harikari Racing entry was first out as he comes through the chase. And we alluded to earlier, the Bentley takes a little while to get the tyres up to temperature, so Philip's going to be pushing somewhat on this out lap to try and maximise as much temperature into that Pirelli tyre as possible, and expect to see the fastest lap come through maybe the second time by for the Bentley drivers who ride on board for another lap of the circuit. It's a fantastic circuit, isn't it, Mike? You know, Bathurst, iconic, as we said earlier. It's almost akin to the Nürburgring, but ever so slightly shorter in a lap.
Yes, definitely. A little bit more on the short side, but when it comes to the entertainment, it's never short of that. When you talk about real-life racing here, you'd mentioned, of course, the famous Bathurst 1000 that happens here every single year, as well as the V8 supercars and the GT cars that take to the circuit. But there's a lot of different variables that you can find on this circuit. Maybe not so many in Sim, but some of the problems that have crossed these drivers in the past is, of course, trees falling on circuit. That's a thing that can happen here. But the various zoo of wildlife that you can expect to see whilst watching a Bathurst race, from anything from kangaroos to wallabies, as well as various bird species, 215 different species of birds, in case you were curious, various snakes, various gonas, which are very big lizards as well, and if you're going to be watching a night race, some possum, because why not? It's an absolute joy in terms of different sights that you can see and different sounds and spectacles that you can experience here in the middle of basically nowhere in New South Wales.
So luckily for us, maybe no wildlife has made its way through to ACC, but certainly a good factor to think about in the real world. Like we say, we have these sim conditions that are, you know, always kind of perfect to a sense. You know, you can't really break the car mechanically. The only thing you can really break is either yourself or your hardware in your rig or at your desk, wherever you're racing. Of course, these days, very much, a lot of different hardware on the market, and that's something to throw in there as Philip Bridgester makes his way towards the end of his lap. A big moment across the mountain while we were talking about the wildlife. A 1:59.8 will be the initial benchmark, immediately bested by Chan in the number 12 BMW. Jaroslav Honzik across the line looked very fast in the first session, immediately up to the front row of the grid. Bested though by 2 Mustangs. Pawlowski comes through a 1:59. That's immediately bested by Dylan Tan with a 1:59 flat nearly. These times are coming in thick and fast. I can barely keep up with the rate these drivers are going at the moment, Mike.
Fastest lap in the previous session, a 1:58.7. We haven't quite seen that just yet. 59.0 is where we have managed to find ourselves with Dylan Tan, Kamil Pawlowski behind, and Sam Gaskell in third. We saw, though, from that Philip Brescia lap, not as good as his previous one. He had a 59.5 on his previous session, which was good enough for 19th position. Now, Philip there needs to find some more time if he wants to make himself up into the top 10. Nico Dobos here as well, and a similar story for the Toga SRO team. Qualified through the Toga Motorsports, of course, and now they're representing them for the Community World Challenge here tonight, trying to slot himself into the top 10. As it stands, though, just looking at the time there, getting out of the way is going to be the 25 there. That's the Bentley that we were talking about. Getting a little bit impeded there is Nico, but it shouldn't affect him too much. He's still gaining a good bit here, and this lap time is going to look like maybe a top 10. With a few more corners left to go, though, it can still spoil the bunch. And here into the chase, looking for the braking zone off to the right before that 100-meter board. Try to get it locked up in time. You have that Bentley still going to be looming in your mirrors and being that ever-present threat just to keep your head on a swivel. Now, though, into Murray's corner for one more time. Nico Dobos comes through it. This is going to be a good lap. Is it going to be enough for pole? No, but it is enough for 15th. Actually, I thought it was going to be even better than that.
So it's a good improvement, isn't it, up into 15th. Meanwhile, Dylan Tan comes under the Liqui Bridge towards the final corner. Looking good so far in the first couple of sectors. Pawlowski across the line just ahead of him in the McLaren. And Dylan Tan with a 1:58.677 cements himself quite securely on the front row of the grid. 0.3 of a second ahead of Sam Gaskell behind in the nearest Aston Martin. Meanwhile, the number 148 equally so towards the end of his lap. Again, teammates with Pawlowski, so maybe sharing some setup similarities between the dynamic cars. And up into P5 again, that puts them together on the grid, the number 148 and the 15 teammates, of course, probably going to be working together at the race start. Spansky comes through P11, immediately up into P2 with a 1:58.942 for the Jardier Community Cup. Of course, Jardier also qualifying in the session at the moment, just inside the top 10. So Jardier may be making qualifying 3, but just under 3 minutes to go, Mike. Lots of drivers still circulating. Anything can happen as these drivers are seeking the smallest of improvements at the moment to get themselves through to Q3.
Certainly are, and one thing that I love to see right now is the fact that we have 6 different communities in the top 6 right now. At the top is the 2S community, represented by Dylan Tan, Adam Spansky, as you had mentioned, in that Jardier community car. We have the SPQR team as well for the ASD in Sam Gaskell's hands. We also have Christers Naughtons in 4th position for the Track.eu team. We have Alex Pendergast for the ACC GT team. And last but not least in those conversations, the Dynamic Motorsports of Sami Joe Abi Nakli in 6th right now, alongside his Dynamic Motorsports teammate in 7th of Kamil Pawlowski.
Plenty of variety indeed. Philip Bridgester across the line, P17 at 1:59.622. He'll have one more stab at it as he crossed the line with just under 2 minutes to go, and that'll be the final lap for the number 25 Bentley driver. Meanwhile, Maulana seeking a late improvement as well in the number 889 2S community team, trying to match the time probably of his teammate towards the front end of the grid, trying to get a second Mercedes AMG through into the qualifying 3 session. No traffic ahead of him, a little bit of a wiggle as he came out of Murray's corner, but still good enough for just inside the top 10, but still plenty of cars behind to come through, and feels like that's not going to be safe enough. I think Mike goes for another time. The McLaren ahead down in P23. I think that's the number 913 of Konjik. So again, could be impeded on this lap, as there's about a second difference between these two. Or by the time Maulana makes it over the mountain, could this net them a nice slipstream towards the chase for their lap?
I certainly think it could. I mean, just looking at the lap times alone here, in the previous session, we had the top 5 drivers into the 158s. This time around, 1 driver is in the 158s, and that's Dylan Tan. So the cutoff window, I'd certainly say that almost none of the drivers are safe right now, barring Dylan Tan. Adam Spansky is improving currently on his lap, but still not finding as much time as he would like. I'm just curious here, as now I'm going to take a look at the track conditions. We have a 22 degrees centigrade ambient temp with a 26 degree track temp, no wind whatsoever. You would think that we would be seeing faster lap times than the previous session, but no, we don't quite seem to be seeing that right now, do we?
Yeah, maybe drivers getting, nerves, maybe getting the best of them in this session. As we see Maulana in the background there into the wall. I think if my eyes weren't mistaking me, they've abandoned their lap. Back to the pit lane they will go. So no improvement from the 2S community car, although looking relatively safe. Although Honzik improves up into P8 as the checkered flag comes out. So Honzik secures himself briefly into the Q3 drop zone, and Andrew Rados for Odyssey Racing League in the number 82 Honda. Can they throw another Honda into the top 10? There's already 2 inside, and that will be a third one as Damian Konchik comes to the line in the number 913 for ACM. Down in P24 at the moment. It's a good improvement up into P19, however, not enough to get themselves through to Q3. And this man here on the drop zone, 1 corner left. Can Andrew Rados do anything, as he runs very wide out of Murray's towards the line? No improvement from the I think it was an improvement actually, but
yes,
indeed it was. P9 manages to make the Q3 cutoff.
Yeah, just sneaks in and eliminates Knockley down into 11th position. There will be no other drivers on an improvement, but Andrew Rados, last minute, when the getting gets good, he got going there and up into the top 10. We'll be seeing him one more time out on circuit here briefly for the next qualifying session. We are going to be eliminating 15 drivers now, and we are going to be seeing the 10 fastest drivers compete out on circuit. Those drivers: Dylan Tan, Adam Spansky, Christers Notens, Luderus von Iverson, Sam Gaskell, Kamil Pawlowski. We also have Milana, as well as Jaroslav Honzik, Jardier down in 8th position, Andrew Rados, as I had mentioned, just sneaking in at the last minute, and then Alexander Pogorlaslav, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry on the mispronunciation there, Alex, in 10th position and rounding out your top 10.
Hardest part of the job, I would say, Mike, pronouncing names. It always catches everybody out eventually on that one. Qualifying 3 has ticked over. Of course, reduced session once again. We're down to 8 minutes to get your lap in. So realistically, you've got an out lap and then maybe 2 or 3 shots at it, depending how you're queuing up for the final section of the corner. Of course, all qualifying attempts will be erased as they were in Q2. So Q3, we start with another blank sheet ready for the drivers to get back underway again. And it's going to be the crucial time, isn't it, where the top 10 gets set. So, you could have been at the back of the top 10 for the last couple of qualifying sessions. If you can pull that out in this session, you could shove your way further up the grid and, of course, avoid all the carnage that typically happens here at Bathurst, whether it be in turn 1 or turn 2. Typically, it's normally quite argy-bargy as they get the opening lap done and try and filter into single file heading up towards the mountain. So the further you can draw yourself away from that, Mike, probably the better at this stage.
Yeah, certainly. And of course, just giving you a better chance as well as you enter the mountain, as if any incident happens on the mountain and you are in the back 10, you're in the back 12, if it happens in front of you, good luck getting around it. It's just going to be an absolute car park, and hopefully everyone survives. But That's Bathurst. The mountain giveth, the mountain taketh away, and it's all about where you qualify for the most part early on. Again, I did mention earlier, these are esports drivers for the most part, so we will be seeing a good level of talent out on circuit, but that does not make them exempt from crashing by any stretch of the imagination. It's certainly still up in the cards, and Bathurst is just one of those tracks. It's unpredictable at nature, it's a cruel mistress, but it's also just so much fun, and especially as a spectator, this is just an absolute spectacle of a circuit.
It's probably one of my favorite circuits, I'd say, Mike, to race and also to commentate and watch. You know, even in the real world, it provides some fantastic racing. And when you throw 40-something esports stars at it, it certainly makes it even more entertaining than maybe the average kind of public lobby that we see in ACC. And everybody gets a little bit kind of, you know, a bit rivalry, let's say. Of course, lots of these drivers do race each other in other championships around the ACC world. So, you know, lots of rivalries form elsewhere, and then they may rear their head here tonight, which could again prove to be very interesting indeed. A train of Mustangs lead the way down towards the chase this time. It's the Track EU Racing Team guys on that one as they head towards the chase, maybe looking to work together in maybe manufacturers honours more than kind of team honours in this sense, but maybe we'll see them swap round for the second lap as Notins does lead them across the line. And his teammate just behind there slowing off to build a gap, and the number 77 also working the brake pedal, trying to get some late desperate heat into these Pirelli tyres. Now riding on board for a third time across the mountain. Of course, we're going to see maybe some different characteristics from the Mustang. Again, the newest car to be added to the world of ACC. It's quite slippery in the terms of the aero setup, so it's an absolute rocket ship in a straight line. Of course, naturally aspirated, high revving V8 engine will pull itself nicely across mountain straight and down the Conrod indeed. But once we get over the mountain, the aero becomes a more crucial factor than the sheer power, so we might see the Mustangs struggling as they crest over through kind of the middle sector, should we say, of the lap bike.
Yeah, certainly, as you begin your ascent up the mountain now, literally climbing a mountain, as you had mentioned at the top of the broadcast, John, the elevation here, roughly 174 meters or 571 feet. A lot to tackle, and it happens very quickly, and you can see that green wall ever so close. I'm almost curious if we had a little bit of a touch through Solomon. I don't think we did. This is the high-speed sector now as you get ready to lock the brakes up down the mountain. You got to be so careful not to run deep there and get your left tire onto the grass as you'll go slipping and sliding down into the dipper and more than likely into a wall, causing a lot more strife for just you, causing a strife for pretty much everybody on the lap. Accelerating out of the Forest Elbow now onto the 1.1 kilometer or 1.1 mile, 1.9 kilometer long straight. Flat out now as you just get to settle in, have a sip of water, and wait for the chase that is going to be approaching. One of the better overtaking opportunities if you can manage to command it around the inside or down the out. Either way, the Ford Mustang, no matter which way you go, it has the power to do so. Then through the cutting, nice and tidy, back onto the accelerator pedal for the final corner in Murray's. You can pretty much just go full send through that corner. Not worry too much about track limits. The wall, though, is of course going to be there. You got to be very careful. In a 159.4, nothing to shake a stick at by any stretch of the imagination, though I do not suspect that will hold for a pole position.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, Honzik very close on his opening lap already. Pawlowski already to the top of the board. Dylan Tan throws his hat into the ring of the second row of the grid as well, as we see lots more times coming through. Iverson currently 1.1 seconds off the pace, so maybe not an ideal first lap to set. He's going to try and set himself up for a better second lap. Spansky already to the front row of the grid, challenging Maulana, who took the provisional pole on the opening run of lap. Sam Gaskell in there with a very small margin as well, and it's looking super competitive in this early stage. Just over 3 minutes to go, so in theory everybody on the track should get 2 more laps in before the checkered flag drops.
Certainly is, and as of right now, within the blink of an eye, in case anyone is curious, which makes these drivers make the blink of an eye look slow, to be completely honest, it's about 0.2 of a second, give or take, the gap between 5th and 1st right now. Now, in that time, In case you were curious, John, the Large Hadron Collider can generate 150 million different particle collisions. Now, I don't know about the maths for Spansky down towards Pawlowski, but with 8 thousandths of a second, we're not talking that many particle collisions in terms of, time, I suppose. I guess what I'm getting at here is these drivers are within, well, a very tight margin of each other right now, and this is, there's not much separating them, basically inches over the course of this 3.8-mile circuit.
I mean, if you overlaid all the cars probably on the start-finish line at the times they finish, they'd, all pretty much be merged into one kind of giant manufacturer of a car, wouldn't they? The margins are so small here as the Dynamic Motorsports McLaren licks the wall coming out of the elbow, so that's going to hamper this lap by for Pawlowski, but still sticking out nonetheless. Not really time now to come back to the pits and get back out on an outlap. Dips a tyre into the grass on the entry to Murray's. That's going to upset the balance of the car as he comes through, and it's only good enough for a 159.6. No improvement there. Dylan Tan towards the front row of the grid. He will go with a 158.7. That's a very good time. Sam Gaskell trying to challenge, puts himself second with a 158.862. And those drivers will go again for another lap, and everybody relatively spread out now in their own pockets of air. Hopefully Gaskell's not going to be too phased by this Mustang, and in the background Andrew Rados P8 for his Honda, very close, sandwiched in between two Ford Mustangs as well. So great to see a good spread. We mentioned it earlier, Mike, but great to see a good kind of variety of manufacturers inside the top 10 as well. Not only have we got the dominant Mustangs, we've also got the Hondas in there as well, which is something we don't see all too often in the world of ACC, but the Honda certainly prevailing here today at Mount Panorama.
Yes, been since, whoa, Jardier there a little bit out of shape, and that is going to be qualifying done and dusted for Jaroslav Honsvik. He unfortunately has to pull over, retire back to pit lane, and that Honda NSX's day gets a little bit worse when it's starting off at the bottom there. Thankfully, it's only going to be 10th position for Jardier. Not the end of the world, but definitely an uncharacteristic mistake out of him. But no, I absolutely, you're right though. I love to see the Honda out there, and with our custom balance of performance that we have out there tonight, it has allowed this car to be extremely competitive, and it's been since like what, 1.7 since we've seen the Honda out in strides and in a competitive form. So I cannot wait to see what it has on offer tonight with 5 different manufacturers in the top 5, heck, 6 in the top 6. This is going to be an absolute show. Kamil Pawlowski, can he spice things up though? Into the final corner right now. Are we looking at any form of improvement? We are. Is it going to be enough though for pole position as Kamil comes to the line? It's going to be a podium, third quickest, 0.13 off the mark.
Dylan Tan going quicker on his last lap, trying to spread himself out from Gaskell. Gaskell crosses the line, can't match the Mercedes on the front row of the grid. Can Maulana throw the Mercedes towards the front row? Over the line he goes. A good improvement to P5, and in the background there, Spansky coming through, puts himself into P4 on the second row of the grid. So qualifying done and dusted. Of course, drivers will be gridded up, ready to go, and it's going to be a very competitive 90 minutes coming up. So don't go anywhere. Lock yourself in, grab yourself a drink, and get ready, because it's going to be something, this race, Mike. Everybody vying for community honors over one another. And, we know what happens when we throw ultra-competitive drivers all into one server. Throwing them at the mountain as well just adds that extra little bit of spice in that's going to make this one great race to watch.
Absolutely. Not only, though, do the drivers want to be battling for who is the best community out there, they are also competing to find themselves being awarded a trophy on the SRO Motorsports stage, which is going to be absolutely an amazing honor if those drivers can manage to make that feat. Unfortunately, only first place gets that award, so it's going to be down to everybody else to see right now if they can spoil the likes of, well, at the moment, Nico Dobos on pole. But of course, I don't think we have explained how the format works here for tonight in terms of points. It's a little bit different than last year. If you guys do remember, of course, we had the team championships last year where the drivers were swapping around in their cars. This time, no driver swap. There's only one car out on circuit, and, well, excuse me, 2 cars per team, but only 1 driver per car. And that is going to basically, at the end of this race, they're going to tally up all of the points from each of the communities and distribute them amongst everybody else. So basically, first position will have the highest points, second position will have the second highest points, third, so on and so forth. And it's all about working together as a team, not individually. That's something to keep in mind. So if you do have your teammate around you, you might want to stick with them a little bit more than otherwise. This is a bit more of a cutthroat championship to be had.
Yeah, I think with the, the prestigious award on the line of a chance to go to the SRO Awards Ceremony, rub shoulders, with famous faces from the real world. It's going to be something that's playing on drivers' minds. Probably want a slice of that action for sure. I know if I was competing for a community, I'd certainly be vying for that prize as well. And like you say, Mike, points being awarded across the board all the way from 1st to 40th. So it's worth sticking around even if you don't have an ideal lap one. We see it all too often, drivers backing out, not thinking that they're going to be able to recover anything after an incident on the opening lap. And at the moment, with how the scoring works here, of course, adding the two cars finishing places together to get the overall result of points to decide who goes, that's going to be something that you need your teammate to stick around for. Even if you're leading the way, say Dylan Tan gets an electric start, flies off into the distance, Maulana still has to finish high, because if you then get, two more teams finish second and third, combined points overall, that's going to push you back down the order again. So it's going to be a lot of maths going on, I can only assume, between the drivers. I hope somebody somewhere has somebody working out all of this as they go through the race on, where they finish, where they need to finish to be able to win overall. It's going to be something all up in the air that we're not really going to be able to track all too well on the broadcast, but we'll do our very best to try and work it out ourselves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't have a calculator in my brain, John. I don't know about you, but we are going to do our best with good old-fashioned commentators math. Everybody's favorite, to see exactly how the results are going to be out there. I just wanted to throw a quick little update as we have joining the server. I had mentioned earlier on in the broadcast that weather might play a role tonight. Now, I'm not seeing any rain in this free practice. However, it's a damp track with about 25 kilometers an hour of wind. So really, it's just completely up in the air, John, on what exactly the conditions that we're going to see are. We have some drivers hoping for flooded race, some drivers hoping for dry, but at the end of the day, it is what it is, and we're more than likely going to see multiple conditions over the course of this race, just due to the 3 times multiplier, as well as the randomized weather elements as well.
Yeah, I can only assume with such a kind of high wind speed that it's of course going to blow a lot of weather through the New South Wales region, and the wind speed is something to definitely keep an eye on during the time here at ACC. The higher the wind, typically, the more the weather moves about, the more the randomness factor, like you say, one of the sliders within ACC is the random factor. So again, throwing a curveball out there, anything can happen at the moment, as we are, of course, 24 kilometers an hour of wind. I don't think I've ever seen a race, Mike, in ACC with more than maybe 10 kilometers an hour of wind. So I think the balance of the cars here today is going to catch some of these drivers off. They're going to have to watch out where that wind is blowing in relation to the corners, because you come into a corner with a big tailwind and you'll be carrying a couple more kph than expected, and your braking point's going to completely change when you actually go for that middle pedal. You're going to be too late on the brakes by that point.
Yeah, it certainly will. And interestingly enough, depending on what you call the corner, we'll just address this early on. I'm going to call this Quarry Bend for tonight, just to establish it in front of everyone right now. But it does have a headwind heading up towards Quarry Bend. So you will be able to brake a little bit later into the second corner of the track. However, on the chase, you're going to have to brake a little bit earlier. That could catch you out. Now, everything I'm saying as well is the free practice conditions. This could head on over to the race, and everything that I'm saying could be out the window, and it could be bucketing down rain with absolutely no wind. It's all speculation, and that's all with, again, the 3 times weather with the variation turned up quite high as well. It might be a night race, so it's just going to be chaos, in short. Definitely one that you do not want to miss.
Yeah, definitely worth sticking around for. And like you say, Mike, everything we're saying right now could all be up in the air once we roll over to the race session. And of course, 90 minutes on the clock tonight. If you are just joining us at 90 minutes ahead of these drivers, it is a solo attempt. So again, it's going to test the endurance and the focus of a lot of these drivers. 3 mandatory pit stops we're giving them, and there's no rules on tire changes or refueling, so it leaves the strategy completely wide open. And once again, no stint timer involved either. So again, that's another thing to factor in to the equation tonight. Lots of drivers normally governed by the the 1 hour 65-minute kind of stint timer that we see quite regularly in ACC. So, you know, do you split this down into 3 30-minute sprint races, take fresh tires, always be at the freshest, the best? Or do you skip the tires and try and run it a little bit longer and try and vie for that track position over your opponents? It's, you know, so many factors at hand tonight. And once you throw it all at Mount Panorama, the most kind of unpredictable racetrack maybe other than the Nordschleife, it's going to be a real spectacle in a minute.
It really is. And, you know, one thing I mentioned as well with the weather is that could change everybody's pit strategy and exactly what they're going to do. Everyone has a plan coming into this race, and we all know the famous saying that no plan survives first contact, especially with the enemy. And that is the weather is the enemy here tonight for the most part. And they're going to be trying to, battle it out amongst each other, and they're going to battle amongst all of these wonderful names here. These are all of the communities that have qualified for the SRO Community World Challenge here tonight. And we'll go through and just read them off real quick once more. Up at the top, of course, the SPQR ASD team. We also have the Hiraki Sim Racing, as well as Dynamic Community, Jardier Community, Lightspeed Racing, Trackalicious, from No Biases from this side of the commentary booth. We have Raceface.pro, SOP Motorsports, QRT Esports, ACC GT, ACC Career Mode. We also have Sim Sport Racing, Toga Motorsports, Onid Community Racing, FRL, Formula Racing League, Track.eu, 2S Community, Odyssey Racing League, Noobs R Us, and Amigos Racing League as well. All 20 of these communities with 2 drivers to represent them tonight. So for a total of 40 drivers taking to the circuit around Mount Panorama in New South Wales.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of teams involved in this one, and lots of drivers as well. One of which joining us at the moment is Eric from Trackalicious. You may know him, Mike.
Yes, I do just so happen to know Eric from Trackalicious, of course, representing the team principal and the owner of Trackalicious, Mr. Eric the Boss Kakasian. Eric, how you doing?
Oh, very good, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing absolutely excellent. We're here, of course, getting ready for the build-up. This is when, Eric, the nerves, they start to rattle a little bit. I know you have Andy Borchers and Ollie Raza piloting for the team of Trackalicious, as of course they were the ones to qualify in our Community World Challenge for Trackalicious. But Eric, you know, as a team principal, why don't you talk us through what's going through your head, as well as going just scheduling with the team, planning and whatnot, for the, I guess in advance, what was leading up to this race?
I think, first of all, we're just most appreciative of SimGrid and SRO allowing us to be a part of this event, this community challenge. We are really appreciative to have our own team who won our event, so that was great. But we had an amazing grid of challengers and drivers that were in the event, and unfortunately, we ourselves beat them out. But with that being said, our 2 guys, I mean, their nerves are cold as ice. Andy Borchers, the Machine, and Ali Raza, Razzle Dazzle, are both phenomenal drivers, probably the winningest drivers within our community. We are really excited to see them race among some of the greatest ACC sim racers I've ever seen. So just happy to be on the grid and appreciative of everybody here and in SimGrid to allow us, and SRO to allow us to be a part of the grid.
Awesome. And now, Eric, I'm just curious, leading on into this for the event here tonight, what were some of the preparations that you and the team took to get them ready for this race? As of course, I know Andy and Ollie are pretty self-sufficient in terms of how they can practice and whatnot. You can rely on them to get the practice in without really even having to tell them. But all in all, why don't you talk a little bit more about the team principal side of Trackalicious?
Yeah, to be honest with you, my role as team principal is significantly hands-off. There's nothing I can tell these guys that they don't already know. Absolute professionals and incredible drivers. And if anything, it's the other way around. You know, as a pleb myself in the ACC world, I only seek to learn from them, not to teach them. My job is only to remind and communicate. It's like, hey, by the way, you know, someone said something in the chat. Did you guys see it? That's the extent of my contribution to their efficacy in this race. Their pace is phenomenal. Their professionalism is phenomenal, and just really great guys. So not much contribution from their racecraft, from their they practice themselves, they prepare everything that they need, and are always there on time. So really not much for me to do personally, but sit back and enjoy and appreciate that they contribute so many hours to practicing and being great to represent our community.
So that leads me into my next question quite nicely there, Eric. How much time truly went into this? You know, we've heard a few drivers about the wet weather and the mixed conditions. Have you done the majority of dry running, or have you really exercised kind of every eventuality here tonight?
I think that there are. I myself have been popping in and out of their practice sessions. One of the challenges that we have ourselves between Andy and Ellie is that we're in completely different time zones. Being a North American focused community, Ellie is in Canada and Andy's in Germany, so their ability to practice together has been very limited. But having said that, they have individually prepared and done quite a few laps to be effectively tune in the wet weather pressures with a variety of weather conditions, being flooded or wet or damp. So I think that's really the key. Short of that, a little bit of tuning in the setup, which they're already quite close to, having done many races. And I mean, I don't know, those who are within our community know, Mount Panorama is Andy's absolute favorite. He is the machine for a reason. He's incredible in the mountains. So very, very familiar, tens of thousands of hours just at the track itself. So for him to get familiar with it is just a matter of changing pressures and a couple of clicks of setup here and there to get it really tuned in to what the setup needs to be for the particular weather conditions.
Excellent. Well, Eric, on that, as we do have a few more team principals here in the waiting, we are going to let you get going here. But I guess, is there any final words that you would like to have before we do move on here tonight and get ready for the race?
Again, huge thank you to SRO and SimGrid for allowing us to be a part of the event. And for those who are looking for North American racing, we're Trackalicious, and we'd love to have you guys. We're gonna fire things up in the new year and have some really exciting things coming up, and would love to have people join us. So thank you.
Excellent, everybody. Trackalicious is Eric Gakosian, Eric the Boss Gakosian, as we like to call him over there. Thank you very much, Eric, and good luck with tonight with Ollie Raza and Andy Borchers. Next, though, we do have the ORL admin, Richard Harknett. Richard, we got a copy from you?
How's it going, guys?
I am doing excellent, Richard. Now, talking about the race out here tonight, you have two drivers in Kobe Chan and Andrew Rados. Andrew managing to put on quite the show in qualifying. How do you feel coming on into tonight? How is the confidence levels, the nerves for the drivers? How are they feeling heading on into this Bathurst race?
You know, I gotta be honest, I really did think that there'd be a lot more nerves going on our end, but the guys are both having a good time, and we're all in a VC together, just being supportive of each other, and we're excited. There's no negative feelings, no nervousness. You know, it's all about having fun here.
Now, you guys are returning, of course, from the previous SRO World Challenge last year. And this being your second time around, maybe that has to play in terms of nerves, saying, well, you know, we've been here before, we've been on this scene, but of course, trying to get up towards the top. How do you guys feel? What are your prospects here for tonight in terms of positions?
Well, I'll be completely honest. I wasn't part of that last year as I recently took over the league, but going into it, we just kind of treat it like any other big esports event. We do have some practice. We do have a lot of team building on the back end and communicating between each other to make sure that we're all on the same page. And, you know, it's just about collaboration and cooperation on this end, making sure all the drivers are happy with each other, no bad blood and no too much fierce competition. But going into it, yeah, we're all just confident, and we just hope for the best and plan for the worst.
So going into this one, Richard, two different manufacturers chosen for your team, a Honda and a BMW. Has that been quite tricky to, you know, get the setup work done, get all the prep done? You know, doing it between two different cars, it's not going to be the same between them.
No, not at all. And honestly, we did totally let these guys pick their cars, whatever they wanted for that, for setups, everything was totally on them. And actually, Andrew's main car is the Honda, surprisingly enough, which I always thought was not very competitive, but he's obviously proven me very wrong. And Kobe's also a main on the BMW. And yeah, we just said to them, whatever car you guys want, go for it. And they both feel comfortable. Kobe struggled a bit in qualifying, but I think he'll do okay overall in the race.
Yeah, a Honda as the main car. I know, let's just talk briefly about that, because of course I had mentioned since about 1.7 was the last time that we really saw the Honda out in competitive nature. Now, is this the custom BOP that we have tonight that allows it to be more competitive, or is Andrew Rados just that cracked? Is he just that good with the Honda NSX, or is it a little something else?
I think it's just a bit of both. Like, I won't even lie, the BOP makes that car able to be used in the way the game is set up today. You know, even in real life, it's BOP'd a little bit favorably. It's not very common on the real life track, as you guys are probably aware of. So even in the game, it's not a very common car. I'm actually surprised to see how many guys have chosen it today, because it's not typically the most competitive car unless it has favorable BOP. Myself, I ran it for a couple seasons in Odyssey Racing League, and I had a horrible experience with it. It's one of those cars that's very rewarding at some points, but with zero warning, it's very not rewarding at some other points. So yeah, I think it's a bit of the car and the driver and the BOP kind of all mixed together.
It is a very volatile car at the best of times, so I'm very excited to see what it can do out there tonight. Now, Richard, why don't we talk a little bit here about ORL, Odyssey Racing League, as you are, of course, one of the main heads up there. Why don't you just give a brief little mention about what your community is and a little bit about it?
Yeah, for sure. And I'll give a shout out to Eric from Tracklicious too, because we started around the same time as them and have a pretty good relationship. So they're a great league as well. Speaking on ORL selfishly here, we are about 3 years old-ish, and we are one of the, if not the fastest growing American-based league out there, which has been really great. A lot of work has been put into it. We have a good amount of staff that are dedicated every week to making sure that everything gets done, and it's all volunteer-based. No one in our league ever gets paid for anything they do, so it's just a testament to the dedication of the staff. I am blessed every day because my life is so busy that we have the people dedicated and the drivers. We've had so many drivers racing for the last 3 years in every single championship that we run. It's been, I think we're on the 14th season currently, and we have drivers who have raced for 14 consecutive seasons. So I really like it. We have an EU series as well that's gained a huge following and a huge amount of traction. And actually some of the guys that are in this race today on the European side are in our league that race with us, like Damian Konchik, so we do wish him well in this race as well. But yeah, I have nothing but great things to say. We do endurance racing every month. We have European and American championships, and lots of different styles of cars. We do GT3, GT4, GT2, M2, Porsche Cup, all the above. So yeah, discord.gg/Odyssey Racing League is where you can find us if you guys are interested in joining.
Excellent and absolutely wonderful. On that, Richard, we are going to get moving here as qualifying is getting ready to go. We'll let you get back down to your drivers, give them some final words of encouragement. So thank you very much, everybody. This is Richard Harkneck from Odyssey Racing League.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate being here. Have a good day. You
as well. Now, John, very nice to hear from the communities as well as, of course, that is the whole reason that we are here tonight. I asked Eric the same question that I asked Richard, but I unfortunately didn't. But no, all in all, it's amazing to see all 20 of these communities. Every single one of these, by the way, available on SimGrid. If you guys head on over to simgrid.com, that is where you can find all of these amazing communities. You can look them up over there, find all of their leagues. But John, this is just, this is what racing is at its finest, right? This is the community race, and we're here for the community.
Yeah, it's exactly how, sim racing began. If you cast your mind back, maybe 20 years or so when, simulator games were really taking off in the early days of, Simbin and up through those ranks in ISI and, all the other publishers that we've seen across the realm of sim racing. It all this online stuff began through small communities. And obviously small communities now are quite big. Sim racing is very accessible to the average Joe. You can walk into any kind of computing store, at least in England. I assume it's the same over there with you guys in Europe across the board. But you can walk into any store and pretty much pick up, a plug and play setup these days. You can, buy the computer, the monitor, you can buy all the controller inputs all in one place, take it home, fire it up, and this is what you're greeted with. And, some of these guys been racing probably many years, some of them relatively new probably to the scene of sim racing and the world that it is. But it's that thing, isn't it? It all began through communities and everybody getting together, forming small kind of pools of friends that then have expanded out into these much bigger, organizations. There's hundreds of people sometimes behind these communities that make it run and make it possible to host these regular events at such a high caliber. We've got not only the drivers, we've got staff that organize the events. We've also got some communities giving live stewarding to their events. Again, it comes down to people like me and you, Mike, of course, commentators that broadcast onto YouTube and Twitch and bring it to a wider audience once again and try and spread the message of sim racing and what it all stands for. But it all began, like you say, through communities, and that's what we have here today. 20 of the finest communities from SimGrid all pulled together. It's almost like an all-stars of the community world. And Ryan Gill in our ears being very vocal about the weather, Mike.
Yes, I was going to mention it myself. It is damp on circuit, with a little bit of rain falling from the sky, and in the next 3 minutes, it's predicted to be quite a bit of water falling from the sky, and within the next 10 minutes, it's predicted to be, you guessed it, even more water falling from the sky. 15 degrees track temp, 15 degrees ambient temp, with 20 kilometers an hour of wind. Coming in the direction of what looks to be, it's kind of hard to tell right now, a bit of a headwind towards the cutting. So you're going to be getting a bit of a side wind on the Conrad Straight and the Mountain Straight, with a pretty strong gust pushing these cars along. I don't know how much that's going to affect anything, but I certainly know the wet weather will.
Yeah, wet weather absolutely going to be affecting, and I can only assume all the drivers with the kind of grid up process that we did have, of course, the wait time, the formation lap, to factor in. Everybody at the moment will be on some kind of wet tire, whether it be kind of, an under pressured wet, ready, or like an over-pressured wet, should we say, sorry, ready for when the track gets a bit wetter. Of course, temperatures drop again, standing water cools off the Pirellis, pressures drop out of that magical window. You might need to just tweak them ever so slightly on the high side to be into the good kind of side of it when we do get underway in just a moment's time. Of course, some cars as well a little bit better in the wet than others. The Mustang, quite torquey, naturally aspirated, comes on power very instantly. It's going to be a little bit of a nightmare to try and get that car tamed today. Some cars with a smoother kind of turboed engine might be a little bit more favoured in the terms of the kind of McLarens and the Hondas that we see inside the top 10. And we know the Aston Martin as well can be a very good platform in the wet weather. Sam Gaskell, of course, alongside Dylan Tan on the front row of the grid. So we're going to have to keep our eyes peeled, Mike, and try and peer through the mist and spray that is being kicked off of these cars. And the worst place you could be, I would say, is probably going to be in that mid-pack, a face full of spray, unpredictable cars behind you. It's going to be a real kind of test of drivers' focus and awareness as we get ready to go green.
It certainly will, as if there's an incident on the mountain, there's almost going to be no time to react to it. You better hope that you see the yellow flags on your dash, because you're certainly not going to see them in front of your face, as you can barely see your hand in front of your face right now, being a night race with these wet weather conditions, and only to get worse. Dylan Tan, though, in the 2S community up on pole position here. You can see next to your favorite drivers' names off to the left-hand side, that number 3 next to their name, and that means that they have 3 mandatory pit stops before they are allowed to make it to the checkered flag in 1 hour and 30 minutes time. Dylan Tan knows that all too well. It'll be about picking when to come in, and with this wet weather, honestly, you can go pretty much the entire race without having to change tires, assuming the weather does stick around and it doesn't dry up. I do not expect a dry line to form in time, even if it was to stop raining as of right now. But this is it, folks. This is the Community World Challenge. 20 drivers lined up, 2x2 Noah's Ark formation, coming through the final corner now. Dylan Tan on pole with Sam Gaskell alongside. 5 red lights on right now. As we approach the Christmas tree, we will get ready to go. Green, 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 and immediately Dylan Tan off to a stellar start. Behind that, a bit of squabbling with Kamil Pawlowski and Adam Spansky as they go side by side into Hell Corner. Everything so far so good, but you can see a bit of chaos in the background unfolding. Cars getting shoved left and right. Parking lot forming here on the first lap. It's a baptism of fire for some, but up at the front, they've been shot out of the first corner like a cannon. Side by side between Pawlowski and Sam Gaskell, they settled nip and tuck as they begin the ascent up the hill.
Crucial to get into single file, isn't it, as we begin the climb up the mountain for the first time. Drivers in slightly unknown conditions going to be finding where the grip truly is as they come across the top of the mountain. Dylan Tan leads through the first sector, and he is the front man that has to do all the work, and eyes on stalks looking for standing water as they come through the compression towards Skyline, keeping it very cleanly out of the wall. There was certainly a McLaren in the wall after turn 1. I don't know who else got caught up in that one. We'll have to cast our eye over that one in just a second. But now drivers beginning the descent down the mountain, and Sam Gaskell very confident on the brakes as they come down through the descent through the S. Is a big slide towards Forest Elbow for Sam Gaskell. He's hungry. He wants this position early on, and he's going to make maximum use of the hole that Dylan Tan is punching in the air at the moment.
And this is a bit questionable out of Sam Gaskell early on. I like to see the aggression, but I don't like to see too much of it right now, as there's still an hour and a half left to go. Plenty of time to make the overtake if you are Sam. And we'll be interested to see here, is anyone going to come in on the first lap? I certainly predict we're going to have a good bit of drivers doing so. I'm not sure Sam Gaskell is going to elect for that alternate of a strategy, though. It wouldn't surprise me if he does come in. That means that he might get that clean air and able to go out, but it's about where he comes out in the track. This is going to be Iverson now looking for the position into 4th. Currently chasing down the likes of Adam Spansky, who's fallen off the back of Pawlowski as well. No drivers at the front coming in, but Jaroslav Honzik is in on this lap, and it seems like a few more drivers also going to be following suit. But as it stands up at the top, Dylan Tan, Sam Gaskell, Kamil Pawlowski, Adam Spansky, and we have Iverson in that order, and looking to stay that way, at least for the foreseeable future. But holy smokes, it's raining.
Absolutely raining indeed, and first man down the lane, Jaroslav Honzik. I was just running over to his live stream to see what's happened, and he's overshot the pit marker. Certainly that's going to be a much slower stop than what he maybe anticipated, but back underway he gets, and should find himself into some clean air in theory, and that should be, you know, an absolute promotion as the heavens have opened and the track status is officially flooded at the moment. Rain getting heavier in the next 3 minutes. It's easing off in the next 10, but you've got to survive the next 10 minutes, Mike.
can we go on board with Iverson right now? I would love to see what it looks like behind the wheel, considering I can't really even see what the heck is happening. Oh, okay, cool. You just can't really see what the heck is happening. Anyways, this is ACC, everybody. This is what you're seeing going down the hill. Do you see the road ahead of you? No, you don't. So be very cautious as there's a car spun round. That opens up the daylight for Iverson, thankfully, as that's going to be one problem averted. Unfortunately for the Honda NSX, they rejoin side by side. We can see it in our rearview mirror. Adam Spansky making a mistake early, and he drops 2 for 1.
Drops 2 for 1 indeed, but crucially 2 for 1 to the Track EU Racing entry. So that's going to be a very good haul of points in these early stages if they can keep this one all the way to the end. But track conditions are horrific. I've never seen rain so hard in ACC in all of my time playing this game in the last few years or so. This is really something, and certainly testing drivers' kind of knowledge and skill of the circuit. I think his teammate behind, the number 77 of Znotins, is going to be driving almost out of the side windows at this point, Mike, just trying to spot kind of landmarks that they recognize as they head around this 2-minute lap. It's something much slower than what we've seen in qualifying. Dylan Tan last time by a 2-minute 14.2. That's a stark difference to what we saw just a moment ago. Stubenrauch being kind of elbowed out almost by Warner on the defensive as they come into Murray's Bend, and it's a bit of a tricky one, isn't it? You've got to be careful in these conditions. You alluded to earlier, of course, Gaskell with the early aggression. That's great to see, but again, it's so easy to make a mistake in these conditions. You know, a patch of standing water that you maybe weren't expecting, and that's it. 2 cars potentially out of the race, and you're going to feel so bad, especially if we start seeing a bit of friendly fire involved at the moment.
Yeah, rule number 1 of racing, do not hit your teammates. And oh no, Adam Spansky, speaking of drivers that are struggling in these conditions, he is certainly one of them, as testing our knowledge as well, to be completely honest. And what are we looking at right now? As it looks like we're coming up the mountain into the chase, or the Audi cutting, I mean, I think, yes, we are into the Audi cutting there, and beginning the ascent up the mountain. But testing all of the viewers at home's knowledge as well. I hope you guys know Bathurst, New South Wales. Yellow flag is out. Sam Gaskell is the driver that it's being held for, and you blink and you miss it. You just saw him in the background. You barely did because of the rain, but he has dropped now back down. Wait a second, where has he dropped down to? As it looks like Sam Gaskell has remained in second. I find that hard to believe, but he has fallen off 5 seconds though to Dylan Tan. Thus is the gaps already forming at the top as we go down the mountain. Well, there's no gaps to be had for Stubenrauch and Warner.
Yeah, Gaskell still remaining in P2 on that one, so maybe just a little bit slower out of the corner than what the game was expecting, and just enough to trigger a yellow flag, but certainly a big time loss, as you said, to Dylan Tan. Martin Lawrence, I'm not sure if he painted the Forest Elbows wall there with the Bentley or not, as he's over the grass sideways trying to hold on to the boat, and it's fine sailing weather at the moment on the track, but certainly very tricky for everyone involved. And just coming down to the chase, it looks like another Bentley behind. I think flying formation for the Harakiri Racing entries, the number 171 and the 25. Meanwhile, Stubenrauch has managed to get past Chris Warner somewhere. I'm not sure where Warner is actually. I'm just trying to spot the headlights in the background. It's definitely another Aston Martin behind. Something's happened to Warner, I think, because that's Rados ahead that we're seeing in the front of the shot. Warner has dropped down ever so slightly and now appears to be maybe in the pit lane. Martin Lawrence certainly electing to take to the lane as well with the number 148. 2 more pit stoppers to tick off so far, Mike.
Yeah, and I don't blame these drivers in the back for coming in for a stop. You know, there's no way they're going to be coming into traffic. They're far enough back to the point where they're just going to get a new, no tires, no fuel, no nothing. They're just coming in to check off one of those stops, pretty much, drive into the box and drive out. That's all they have to do in order to clear themselves of one of those stops. And it's just to get them some clean air. That way they don't have to worry about drivers like this going side by side up the mountain in these conditions. Is a deadly feat at the best of times. Nevertheless, in these conditions, Dylan Tan here, well, he's just, as you had mentioned, smooth sailing right now with his outboard engine attached to this AMG. It is boating along, which you barely can see. It's snowing. I'm just going to be completely honest here, John. It's snowing.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen raindrops this big in ACC. I didn't realize the weather quite did this, but it's impressive to see nonetheless. I think Dylan Tan there getting past a slower car. I think already putting somebody a lap down in the early stages. So, of course, some drivers going to be struggling with the weather versus others. And the number 148, I just saw that a drive-through penalty popping up. I can only assume, Mike, that's going to be for speeding into the pit lane. Maybe, you know, misjudging how early they have to brake in these conditions to make the pit limiter line of 50 kph.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see somebody miss that in these conditions. That's assuming the brake board's even there and somebody didn't take it out, which might add even more of an issue into this. Now, of course, penalties will be thrown out for if they are intentionally destroyed, but in these conditions, heck, you just can't see. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? Here we go. We have some incidents rolling in here with our live stewarding. Incidents between car 74 and 88 on lap 1. A 5-second penalty for 74 for causing a collision. Now, the number 74 car is going to be Nathan Pierce in P27 right now. One thing I also did want to mention is our biggest gainers and our biggest losers at this stage. Kieran Pendergast, 21 positions gained so far, up from 37th from where he started. He is in 16th position right now. By far our biggest gainer. The only one even close to that is Victor Abramov, who has 13 positions gained respectively. Now, some of our biggest losers are, of course, to some of the drivers that took pit stops early. Kamil Pawlowski, who actually didn't take a pit stop, but they are down 20 positions from where they started. 31 for Milana, who did take a stop. So in terms of drivers that have not, 20 positions lost for Kamil Pawlowski is the number to beat.
Yeah, it's quite a high number, isn't it? Especially this early on, but maybe the tables will turn later on and we'll find his way back up the order. Rain is looking to ease off in the next 10 minutes, but it's still going to be there. So I think this track's going to take quite a while to dry out here. 14 degrees in the air, 14 degrees down on the track, and temperature, Mike, usually relates to the drying rate. So being this cold, I think we're in for a very wet 1 hour and 20 minutes.
I think the driest we're going to see this track is about as dry as a kiddie pool. It's not looking good, I'll be honest. The wet weather is absolutely soaking it down right now, and as Ryan Gillen, our ear forum production, pointing out, the driest the race more than likely will be was at the very start. Now, hopefully the rain dies down a little bit just so we can, I don't know, see the racing that's ahead of us right now, because we are currently looking at it through a snowstorm. And vision and visibility definitely is at a premium. Chris Warner has found that out, unfortunately, as he is facing the incorrect direction on the descent of the mountain. And to be fair, any car that shows up here, he's blind. Nobody can see him. They just see the yellow flag. So what do you do if you're Chris Warner here?
It's very awkward, isn't it? You can only pray that these guys maybe have someone in the chat with them. It's getting very dicey as cars begin to filter through. Warner's kind of Austin Powers his way into the Armco walls. There's another car on the come-ups. Oh, very narrow. That's a BMW M4 going through. I'm not sure which one due to the amount of spray. There's an Aston there, unsighted into the back of Chris Warner before they get to the elbow, and that's not good either. That was a very hard impact there from one of the Aston Martins, and Warner just trying to stay way out of the way now, and not too sure who that was in the Aston, but certainly a big impact there for Warner. That's going to be a lengthy repair when he gets that car back to the pit lane.
Yeah, that was, I think, Yevhen Seiko in the Noobs R Us car who got collected in that. Unfortunately, Chris Warner made it by every driver. Every single one of the drivers, while he was stationary, made it through, except for the last one. And oh my goodness, Chris Warner is really struggling to keep it between the mayo and the mustard right now, and he has found himself off into the grass, but manages to rejoin. It is chaos for him right now as we're looking, though, at Yaroslav Honzik in 17th position. He is one of the few drivers that has made a stop around him in terms of positions. He's a little bit out of position from where he started, and that is, of course, again, due to the fact that he decided to come into pit lane and make one of his stops early.
Yeah, of course. It's a good thing to do sometimes if you find yourself locked in the pack and you can't really see you through your opponent. It's certainly a good thing to do to pull yourself out of that train and, you know, try and just find that breathing air as we see a battle for the lead this time. I think Dylan Tan's rear wing is on the skew. I think the Mercedes has been in the wall at some point. He's struggling to keep it in a straight line and just trying to look through the rain. That wing looks off at a 45-degree angle there.
Checking. Yeah, holy smokes. Yeah, you're right. His onboard camera right now is less than ideal. Talk about less than ideal visibility. When you go on board with him, well, his entire windscreen has been smashed in, basically like he parked it in an incorrect neighborhood somewhere in Detroit, to be completely honest. But now he comes into pit lane, Dylan Tan, now gonna have to repair, and Sam Gaskell, your new race leader.
It's going to be a lengthy repair, isn't it, for Dylan Tan? Very unfortunate after such a good display in qualifying consistently across the 3 sessions and a good race start as well. Viewers at home, you'll be pleased to hear the rain is stopping in the next 10 minutes now. It's easing off across the next 3. Will be fully stopped, fingers crossed, in the next 10, providing more doesn't blow in with the 16-kilometer-an-hour wind that we have currently at the moment. Daylight is trying to break through some kind of cloud, but Sam Gaskell is your race leader at the moment, the number 45 SPQ Racing entry, sighting themselves up the mountain, being chased by a couple of Mustangs, a car that I mentioned earlier on, probably not the best in the wet, but Snowtins and Iverson certainly proving me wrong with their display so far.
Yeah, they certainly are driving the wheels off of that Ford Mustang. Apparently, it's got the ponies even in the wet condition, and Nautons and Iverson absolutely perfect so far. And the track.eu team also looking very, very beneficial at this stage. Now, Adam Spansky here in the Jardier community running in 5th position. He has found himself in a fight with Stubenrauch. Stubenrauch behind right now, but looking to change that within the near future. It's Honda NSX on Honda NSX violence, something that you do not see too often, especially in these conditions, especially at the mountain. But you also mentioned the fact that we're going to see the rain, yes, disappear. The rain is going to stop in 10 minutes. Now, how that's even possible, I don't know, but I'm here for it. I have no idea what's going to happen. I do not think the track is going to dry out by any stretch of the imagination. I'm pretty sure it is still going to be as soaked as a sponge, but either way, it's going to be another variable that these drivers have to contend with, and we're only 15 minutes into this race.
Indeed, it's going to be a long kind of evening ahead for some of these drivers on their kind of crusade towards the prize at the top. Meanwhile, Damien Konzik here, the number 913, missed out of the top 25 in qualifying 2, I believe, on that one, but certainly finding good progress so far in the number 913 McLaren. He's up into P12 and finds himself in a little bit of a nice place, I would say, Mike. He's not too close to the guys ahead, and equally the guys behind aren't too close to him, so he can kind of drive his own race very briefly at the moment, providing he doesn't drop it in a puddle at any given point, because it looks very treacherous as the McLaren shortcuts through the chase just ahead of him. That's going to be more avoiding action. I think that could be Bixby maybe in the number 611. Dives over to the pit lane to take another mandatory stop off their tally so far. Lots of drivers, I think, at the moment, Mike, want to kind of waste a bit of time in the pit lane, don't they? The more they can sit in the lane and off the racing track, hopefully the drier it may get by the time they come out.
Yeah, to be honest, not a bad shout whatsoever, but the problem is if it starts raining later, then you might have to make one unnecessary pit stop, and that was, by the way, Clive Bixby. That was the spinner there. He was side by side with Nico Dobos for a good while down the back stretch, and unfortunately they had a bit of an incident there, Clive did, and went deep through the corner, and he has now come into pit lane and elected for his stop on this lap. Looking at these stoppers, I'm seeing honestly more drivers than I was expecting that have taken tires already. Now, granted, some of these are from damage repair, some drivers just taking some fuel, but honestly, I'm seeing about half the field that has pit so far elect to take a new set of boots, which isn't really going to do much in these conditions. You know, tire wear isn't an issue in the wet, especially 15 minutes in, and they more than likely can make it all 90 minutes on these tires if it was to continue raining, which it is predicted to not. It is predicted to dry out. So the drivers really just kind of need to sit and wait right now and suck up the conditions, in my opinion. But we'll see. A lot of drivers coming in this lap, and we'll see if that does affect them long term. But yeah, I like the idea of just sitting in pit lane, trying to use as much time as you can, and maybe, just maybe, the track will dry out a little bit more as we're starting to get glimpses of the cars now. We can actually see the liveries again, John, which is a good sign.
Yeah, I can actually see, you know, who is passing through in front of us rather than maybe second guessing by looking at the shadow of a headlight. Rain certainly easing off at the moment. It's due to stop still in the next 10 minutes, although high wind speed could bring some more weather back in later on. So don't hold your breath for a weatherless race after this, but certainly is easing off and makes our job a little bit easier up here in the booth, and certainly viewers at home can kind of see what's going on a little bit better as well. Just looking towards pit stop timers that have been going on. Of course, lots of drivers have been in and out of the pit lane. Lots of drivers around the 40-second mark, so that kind of indicates that somebody's coming in, they're stopping, they're getting underway again, so no fuel, no tires. We're seeing a lot of drivers as well creeping into the 1 minute mark, so 1 minute 16, 1 minute 15-ish. That could again be for damage repairs along the way, maybe a full service with fuel and trying to maybe just top off the fuel, like you say, Mike, to try and get as far into the race as they can on a correctly correctly pressure setted set of wets, if that's even a phrase, at this current stage. And then looking at Dylan Tan, it's a 1 minute 39 stop for the Mercedes 2S community driver coming in, fixing that damage and getting back underway again. So a big time loss for the number 144. However, showing the pace he did in practice and qualifying, Mike, I'm sure this race will come back to the number 144 eventually.
It very well may, and you know, I just wanted to take a moment and talk about strategy as well, as I had the chance of talking with who's currently sitting in P11, Andy Borchers, for the number 97 Trackalicious team. First off, though, incidents between car 148 and 35 on lap 1, 5 seconds, heading the way of Stubenrauch for unfortunately being a little bit naughty. But Andy Borchers, he had mentioned this is sort of the oh, we have penalties rolling in. Hold that thought once more. 10 seconds rolling in there for car number 63 after a collision with 501 on lap 1. 10 seconds for Neuwirth down in 19th position currently. They have already made their stop. When they come in for the next stop, they will, oh my goodness, who is that? That was Seddon Tut down in P36 right now. He has found himself spun the wrong way around for the Formula Racing League, unfortunately. And that is going to be a bit of time loss. Now, if I could maybe get out what I'm saying, as we still have battles, you know, I'm just never going to be able to say it. It is what it is. I've accepted it at this point. Adam Spansky is up into 4th now.
A good comeback there for the number 325 driver, and rain certainly easing off in the last lap or so. Drivers being able to probably see where they're going a little bit easier, and we can certainly see them much easier now as coming down Mountain Straight just ahead there. I think that could be Dylan Tan maybe in the Mercedes, just trying to put a pass on, coming in to Griffin's Bend, turn 2, as he begins the climb back up the mountain. But a few penalties being handed out, as we said, Mike, and if anybody at home isn't sure of how they're going to be served, they'll be served during their pit stop. So instead of being held for 30 seconds, for example, for a full service in ACC, Stubenrauch, for example, will be held for 35 seconds, and Neuwirth will be held for, of course, 40 seconds. So that will be cleared off once that penalty has been served. So any additional penalties you see after that will, of course, be added on once again by our live stewards. And a big thank you to those guys for casting their eye over today's antics, Mike. It's not going to be an easy one. You know, we think we've got it hard trying to pick out cars, and drivers have got it hard trying to see the circuit. I wouldn't like to be judging some of these incidents from their point of view.
No, certainly not. And a big shout out to Stefan for managing that, as well as he is the race director here tonight, managing the team of stewards. So thank you very much to him for providing us with, or I guess providing the drivers with keeping them on their best behavior and providing the show for us as well. We just went on board here with Justin Stubenrauch, who is following Adam Spansky, who was following Nautens, but now 19 seconds off of third position are these two. You can see well, you can't really see, the car is getting closer, and the move is getting more and more on as we approach the braking zone, but we're just a bit too far back. And with that dry line starting to form, now it's not formed yet, it's still in the process of forming, but you really do not want to be going off of the line here, because that is where your tires are going to be finding some nice stationary patches of water, and you might go exploring a bit of grass, which nobody wants to be finding here on lap 10.
Yeah, absolutely.
As
So
well.
that's the worst thing you could be finding there. But Stubenrauch still sizing up Spansky as they come down Mountain Straight. A battle ahead as well for position. It's actually Maulana fighting away there. So they're trying to make up a position equally as so. Stubenrauch is trying to put one on Spansky as well. And it's always very, very tricky, isn't it? When blue flags come out, Mike, as we see the marshal waving away there at Griffin's Bend. When blue flags are coming out, but you're trying to run your own fight, but at the same time not trying to get involved with somebody else's fight, who is of course a lap down as the Ferrari pulls way off to driver's left there. That's a very risky move. Made contact with the wall as well, but managing to get everybody through relatively safely, but still very risky to yield in that position.
Yeah, a bit of an overreaction from Ben Gilroy there, but either way, no harm, no foul, and thankfully he just gets out of the way and says, I'll let the leaders fight on, or at least the higher up positions, continue their scrap. And speaking of that, here is the battle with Jaroslav Honzik as well as Martin Lorek, as Lawrence and Victor Abramov. So a three-way fight right now for 13th position. Yaroslav looking for the move here potentially, but it seems like he is just a bit too far back. He's getting pressured on right now from the Abramov, excuse me, is getting pressured on from Yaroslav. That fight continuing on up the hill. Whoa, a big loose end there from Yaroslav as he is just trying to power the car on through the Audi cutting. And now ascent up the mountain. This is where the overtaking chances get lower, and I've just also noticed some more penalties rolling in for Stubenrauch. 15 seconds now is going to be the time stationary before he ends up having to get the stationary jacks and lift up in the stop so he can get his pit stop underway. Abramov, though, struggling to hold on right now. Down the mountain we go once more. Nice and tidy. You just have to take it patient, calm, cool, and collective. And don't worry about the fact that, yes, you have Jardier pressuring you down the mountain, telling you, go faster, you can go quicker through. Victor, he says, no, I can't. I need to keep it between the lines here. I need to stay out of the wall. And he'll continue pushing on. There is that penalty that I was mentioning for the 35 on lap 3. That's going to be a 10-second penalty for a collision with the 111. But now Yaroslav, more than likely, John, has the writing on the walls here. And as we approach the long mountain stretch, will he get it? No, seems like he's actually didn't.
Yeah, not close enough to fire one up the inside at the Chasers. More penalties rain through. Incidents between 99 and 148 on lap 4. 15 seconds to the car 99. That's Mayer currently down in P23 on that one. Honzik having a look into Murray's corner, although not alongside the Aston Martin enough to fire one up and make a position. And just see there in the background, glinting off the pit lane, the wet tarmac, is actually some sun peeking through as we come into the kind of first half an hour done nearly of this race. The sun is trying to come out. Track temperature and air temperature is up from 14 to 17 degrees, and the track status is wet. So we are drying out ever so slightly, Mike, but we're still going to be seeing these conditions for, I would say, at least another half an hour of this race.
Yeah, and that is going to be interesting as we have the sun peeking out. I have no idea if we're going to dry up or not. And will the dry tires come into play? We do not really see a dry line forming just yet. Maybe, just maybe, you can see the starts of one starting to form. There's some skid marks from somebody who, well, unfortunately made a bit too dry of a line through there after locking their brakes up and presumably colliding with the wall. Abramov, though, not going to be too phased by that as he just continues on lapping his merry way with the likes of Jardier behind and just not worrying too much for the SOP Esports racing team. It's just about survival right now. You still have an hour on the clock, a little bit more than that, and anything can happen in racing, John, and it normally does.
Yeah, anything can happen in racing, and certainly anything can happen at Mount Panorama. We spoke about it earlier. It's a very unpredictable track, almost like the Nordschleife. You just never quite know what's around the next corner. And earlier on, around the next corner, of course, Chris Warner sideways was what some drivers found a very scary spectacle. And, you know, anything can happen, as we keep saying. Just over an hour on the clock, and conditions changing. Of course, tires, when the circuit starts to dry out, wet tires will then begin to overheat. Some cars look after tires better than others, which again, we'll see that different characteristic kind of building itself into the race as Honzik runs off the chase down under the Liquid Moly Bridge. He looked once before into the final corner. Can he have a little sniff again? He's still just not close enough, kind of holding station, I would say, just behind Abramov, as we see the sunrise there on the start-finish straight, glistening off the tarmac here, and should see, hopefully, a much drier line forming very shortly. But again, it throws that unpredictable element in the background. That's a Bentley off the circuit. That's Martin Lawrence in the number 171. He'll drop 2 positions, I believe, to the 667 and the 28 of Thomas, as he gets back underway, trying to build some speed through the mountain straight once again. So, you know, lots of unpredictability, and when the weather changes, the track surface dries out, it's then going to throw that curveball of when do you pit for those slicks? Do you try and leave it as late as you can, or do you pit quite early and just try and make those slicks work on a slightly drying track and wait for the tire to come in, or do you just try and use the most of your wet tire and then finally come in when the conditions are a little bit more optimal for that dry Pirelli?
Yeah, I mean, on the mountain in particular, the track is still considered to be wet right now in terms of the ACC director, and more than likely, once the track hits greasy, that's when I would predict the drivers starting to come in for the dry tires. Now, of course, they're going to be keeping an eye, though, on the weather and what's going to be happening in the future, as well as with the rain that we've had and with the potential rain forecasted in the future. In fact, now, as it just popped up on my screen, the next 10 minutes, we're going to be seeing the rain return. So we're going to have a bit of dry conditions. The drivers more than likely are not going to be able to get dries on in time for that next rainstorm. So it'll have to be down to see how long the next rainstorm hits, how hard it's going to be, and if it does, in fact, make it able for the drivers to take dries later on in this race. But again, for the next 30 minutes, I do not see that happening. It is going to be a slip and slide.
Absolute slip and slide indeed, as we see another penalty popping up between car 60 and 611 on lap 7. It's a 5 seconds this time to the car number 60 for causing a collision, and that's Dobos in the number 60 Aston Martin. He's only just come into the pit lane, actually, so I'm not too sure if that penalty will clear. And then another one, car 39 and 171, lap 8. It's a 5 second to the car number 39 for causing a collision once again. So plenty of collisions coming in from the steward's mic. I can only assume that's just people being a little bit kind of overzealous and, you know, not finding the grip before trying to make moves and not trying to understand how the circuits evolved very quickly when the heavens opened earlier on. It was just a bit of clumsy driving probably involved for all parties, I would say.
Yeah, a bit of ambition over adhesion, as I often like to say, and in these conditions, it's all too easy to do. And Yaroslav Honzik here, is he trying to fix a move into the Audi cutting? He was really, really thinking about it there. Victor Abramov, though, not giving him the light of day whatsoever, squeezes him into oblivion, and Jardier, not able to get the move done just yet, has to settle in again for the long mountain stretch on this sector. The overtaking opportunities are almost zero, barring a mistake from the car in front. Now let's see, can Jardier maybe force a mistake out of Victor Abramov? Down the hill we go. So far, so good. The first part of the cutting is more than, or the first part of the sunset there is more than likely where you're going to be seeing the drivers make their mistake. And on the sun, I did want to mention, absolutely beautiful down the start-finish straight. What a picturesque photo. You know, ACC, it may not look the best in these snowy conditions, but it never fails to impress me with just how beautiful this game and simulator really is.
Yeah, it's the thing I love about ACC. It's certainly one of the better looking simulators on the market, should we say, as Honzik there gets past Abramov. I think there was a lift from Abramov. I saw a flash of the lights from Jardia earlier on in the Conrod Straight, so I'm wondering if Abramov had the indicator on and Jardia flashed to say, I've seen your indicator, let's go for it, let's get this done. And you can already see the gap that Honzik has built up there. And the number 39, of course, 5-second penalty to their name. So Abramov probably not too phased about losing that position. Again, they can get that back in the pit lane, but towards the front, Gaskell out front, nearly 14 seconds to the good over the Track EU Racing Team Mustangs, the 86 and the 77. I would say almost in flying formation, but the gap has certainly opened up between the two teammates as well. And this is a perfect scenario, isn't it, for the Track EU guys? Of course, Iverson leads Znotins in the number 77, and you know you've got that rear gunner, Mike, don't you? You don't have to worry about who's behind you, because chances are anybody catches the number 77 and they're not going to make it all too easy. They're going to make that Mustang as wide as it can be down the Conrod. They're going to make it so wide over the mountain, and it's just going to be a rolling roadblock for anybody trying to get up into the podium.
It is, and you know, I'm looking here right now at Sam Gaskell and Justin Stubenrauch in the SPQR Racing team. Stubenrauch with that 15-second penalty is going to be the elephant in the room, in my opinion, right now, considering the fact, actually, no, they only have 2 seconds to Kobe Chan. There we go. It's looking at the gap the wrong way around here. So this is going to basically guarantee that the Track.EU Racing team is going to be in the lead of the point standings heading on into the next, well, or I guess the final hour of this race. As Stubenrauch elects to come in, I think that will be the nail in the coffin for that team. And he's going to have a lot of work to do to get back up into the podium positions and back ahead, potentially of Naughtons and maybe of Iverson. But right now, with that 30-second penalty, or with the 30-second gap they already have, Stubenrauch with a very damaged Aston Martin. He actually clattered into the wall at the top of the mountain on the previous lap. So with that 15-second penalty will also come repairs. The SPQR team, they need to get as much as they can together right now. I mean, Sam Gaskell, he's doing everything he can with the fastest lap and leading the race, but his teammate right now is struggling.
Yeah, that's a crucial thing, isn't it? It's not just about that one car entry. When the checkered flag drops, both cars' points, of course, combined to make an overall scoring of who essentially wins the top prize, should we say. And that is, of course, a trip to the SRO Awards, a very kind of prestigious ceremony held every year, rubbing shoulders with, of course, real-life superstars and familiar faces, and even receiving a trophy on the big stage. So it's going to be quite an accredited, isn't it, prize to win, Mike. You know, not everybody gets to go to the SRO Awards, and getting the recognition that not only these drivers kind of deserve for their, you know, their ride in the esports world, but also getting their community's name out there. That's going to be the bigger thing for some of these guys today.
Yeah, exactly. And just doing the maths right now, as I'm still trying to get the maths as well for the third position, but coming into, if the checkered flag was to fall right now, and we're not looking at Justin's penalty that he has, 155 points would be for the for SPQR, and for the Track.EU team, 153. So right now, 2 points separating them as of 53 minutes and 49 seconds. Now that will change, of course, and the drivers that are in position to capitalize is the Odyssey Racing League. ORL currently 5th and 6th right now. That would be enough for, as my quick maths have it here, that would be enough for 131 points. So they need to find some more positions. Now, of course, with Stubenrauch gaining one, or going to be giving those positions away, that will give the positions to Chan and Rados. So it's up in the air. It's completely anyone's game right now for the top three. And this is going to get exciting. The team that is behind the Odyssey Racing League is Trackalicious, with Andy Borchers, Ali Raza a bit further back. So the points are going to be a struggle for them. Yaroslav Honzik, as well as his teammate. Where the heck did, speaking of that, where did Yaroslav's teammates go? Adam Spansky down 25th with only one pit stop. I wonder what happened there.
Yeah, I can only assume that's going to be a very big mistake coming out from Spansky. Apparently, Brian Gill observing that he was in the wall early on, so possibly a lengthier pit stop for Spansky. Just looking actually, at his pit stop timer, Mike. Lap 12, he came down the lane. It was a 2 minutes 38 from pit in to pit out. And on the flip side, we saw Dylan Tam with the bent rear wing, crooked steering earlier on. That was only a 1:39. So that's a very, very big time loss for Spansky there. And that's going to be quite hard to undo over the next 52 minutes or so. But like we keep saying, anything can happen. Mount Panorama, lots of penalties being handed out earlier on. So we're going to see teams shuffling up and down the board as well. So again, that's something to factor in for the comeback drive. And as we touched on earlier on, in the broadcast, every single position will get some kind of points today, all the way from 85 points for P1 down to 1 point for P40, and there's not even 40 cars circulating on the server, so 37 is what we have at the moment. You still net yourselves 4 points, so you know it might only come down to 4 points with your quick maths earlier on, Mike. Of course, it was only 2 points between the two teams, so every single point matters here today.
It certainly does, and Sam Gaskell maximizing for his team right now. That'll be the crucial element that I'm looking at for that team, as we have Sean Tempest, who in this Tempest has found themselves facing the wrong way around. You think with a name like that, they'd have a bit of an advantage here, but maybe I guess it's a curse, as we see this battle continuing between Ali Raza and Philip Brescia on the descent down the mountain. Ali Raza in that BMW. I was talking with him before the broadcast, and they have only about, or they need to take 32 extra liters of fuel at some point. So that's something to keep in mind for all of the drivers out there. There's not a single car on the field that has a big enough fuel tank to make it the 1.5 hours that, or the, excuse me, I guess, yeah, 90 minutes that we have for this race. And here we go, Philip Brescia on to Ali Raza, and the razzle dazzle elects not to battle too hard, just allows Philip through.
I think quite a sensible fight there from Raza in the number 17. It's, you know, not really something you want to be doing, is fighting really hard in these kind of a bit, you know, sketchy conditions. We saw how much Brescia's car moved when he pulled out to the right on the Conrod, hit a puddle of water, and it's enough to kind of drag the car off onto the grass almost. And we all know from motorsports in the real world, of course, wet grass and race cars isn't a good thing, as we see Vukans here for Lightspeed Racing, the number 73. We saw him backwards earlier on in the cutting, I think it was, somewhere around the top of the mountain, and he's trying to find his way back to the pit lane, and it's very risky stuff trying to get down the Conrod in a safe enough manner. White flags, of course, waving to signify that there is a slower car. Hopefully some spotters will have picked that up as well, because when you're steaming down the Conrod, Mike, having a car going 50 kph, especially in these conditions, not ideal.
No, especially when you don't know what direction it's going to be turning. If you go over a little tiny bump, that car certainly is not how the engineers had drawn it out and the aerodynamicists had in mind when they threw it into the wind tunnel. That was a bit hard to watch, to be honest, unfortunately, but they will continue on, and maybe even just for the return to the garage might even be quicker considering where they were at on the circuit. But either way, hopefully they make it back around the circuit without any issues, as we tune to Dylan Tan, our previous race leader, but after making contact with the wall, had to pit early with a 90-second stop. He has come out in 11th position. He has 5 drivers ahead of him that have made their pit stop already, so he is looking at presumably about an 8th or 9th, maybe even 7th position when all things are said and done and all pit stops are had. However, penalties also playing a role in things as well, so you know, he could honestly still be in the top 5.
Yeah, you got to bear in mind, of course, Honzik will lose 5 seconds in the pit lane. Neuwirth ahead in the number 63 will lose 10 seconds as well. So that'll be an easy kind of jump essentially for Dylan Tan, providing he keeps it penalty free up until the next round of pit stops. I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it, Mike? Knowing the conditions that were coming in, it's probably would have been very sensible to brim the car on the grid, run it as long as you can on the initial set of wets, and then just kind of stagger your next 2 pit stops. Have one pit stop that's a full service, tyres and fuel again to get you to the end, and then just come in for a quick stop and go, just to clear those final 2 stops off and probably minimize your pit lane time. And like you said, only 30-ish litres to try and get the BMW across the line. So you'd not only have a lighter car, you'd have a lighter car on fresher tyres as well, which again should in theory be faster. But an absolute curveball thrown in with the weather today. Wind speed 10 kilometers an hour. That's settled down quite a bit from what we saw at the start. Weather is looking dry for the next 10 minutes. Track status officially wet, and the air temperature and track temperature is up a degree into 18 degrees now. So hopefully we'll see some kind of drier running, but certainly today proving a challenge for the drivers with these wet conditions. We keep seeing flashes of yellow flags, but we don't quite see what car causes it. So you know, every driver is going to be on their toes at the moment, playing with those TC and ABS settings, trying to find the perfect setting for their current conditions, and then in another 10-15 minutes time that'll probably change all over again. But Dylan Tan trying to get towards the front, closed up a little bit on New Earth this lap, 0.3 of a second I think gained on the Aston Martin, but it's kind of tit for tat at this stage in these mixed conditions. This one's going to be settled on the pit lane.
Yes, indeed. And for anyone curious, the yellow flag that we saw on this lap was in the Quarry Bend, and Damian Konchik was the one that did end up flying that flag, or, well, making the flag fly for the ACM team. Unfortunately for him, he did have a bit of a spin, kept it out of the wall for the most part, and is back on circuit with a little bit of damage to be had. I know we had quite a few ACM supporters in chat, which again, let us know who you're cheering for. We got 20 different communities out here on track, all battling for the gold. Let us know who you are rooting for. We'll do our best to show it off as we have battles, though, currently unfolding on circuit. This is Rados and Honzik. Up the hill they go once more. Jardier, he knows, he's been around this track a few times in his day, and he knows the overtaking needs to happen now if you don't want to be bottlenecked for the next, well, about 2.5 miles.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? When you get stuck behind a driver coming up the mountain, once you get round the cutting, you haven't made the pass, chances are you're not going to make it until you get down to the chase next time by. And the dirty air wash, of course, losing that crucial downforce, and it's exactly what you need in this kind of weather condition to stick that car into the road. As we see a few more penalties coming up, looks like Rados is slightly phased by Honzik being so close in the mirror, missing a couple of apexes as he came over the mountain, but still managing to keep it on the straight and narrow. Thomas in hot pursuit as well in the number 28 Aston Martin. He's going to be rubbing his hands together with glee, the fact that Honzik has a 5-second penalty to serve, and Rados has been a bit of a roadblock at the moment, very close as they come through the elbow out onto the Conrad Straight. The sun coming out from behind the clouds once again to try and dry up this circuit, and Honda on Honda action this time by, as the draft is given to Honzik once again. Will Rados make this easy like we saw last time by? I think Honzik is drawn alongside, side by side into the kink. It's getting very close. Last of the late breakers as they come into the chase, and Rados just not on that favoured line to have the grip that Honzik had, and had to surrender the position. Leaves him vulnerable to Thomas as well. So could be 2 positions lost for the number 82 driver in this scenario.
It was Michael Thomas there. We can see ahead for the SSR racing tier, the SSRI, excuse me, in 7th position now, and Andrew Rados with a 2-for-1 special, but unfortunately it was the wrong way around. He loses 2 positions within 1 corner. Back onto the stretch, just seeing a lot of cheers for Toga, seeing a lot of Tonid as well as ACM. I love to see it. Thank you guys for joining us. I hope everyone's having a lovely evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are in this fine world. Thank you for joining us on the SimGrid YouTube channel. If you guys are enjoying, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button while you are here. As of course, it's completely free to do here on YouTube, and it means the world to us here at SimGrid. So thank you guys very much in advance for doing so. I hope you guys are continuing enjoying this amazing action that we have ahead of us. Oh my goodness, that McLaren almost found themselves facing the wrong way here, but they're going to be getting the blue flags waved as this battle approaches their rearview mirror.
Yeah, nightmare for Martin Lawrence at the moment, climbing the mountain and seeing a slower car ahead of him, especially one that's getting a bit loose. You know that's going to equal time loss, and exactly what Lawrence doesn't want in the number 171 Bentley, with New Earth behind and a charging Dylan Tan behind him as well. Two very competitive drivers in the mirrors. Lawrence just needs to dispatch this McLaren as soon as possible, and maybe if you were the McLaren driver, Mike, you might indicate to the side on the Conrod and just let this kind of train of cars go. But again, Lawrence hasn't really gained all too much over the mountain, but I'm sure the slipstream down the Conrod will draw that Bentley back into the back of the McLaren.
Yeah, and this is Clive Bixby that is ahead here, so yeah, like you said, I would not be surprised for him just to throw his blinker on here and get out of the way, but it does not seem that he has any intent to. He wants to stay on the lead lap right now, or at least lead to the P10 and whatnot. The battling will continue on, though, as New Earth there trying to hold on with both hands, but Tan from downtown goes full send baseball, and he goes off into the outfield. Unfortunately for the AMG, gonna need to recover back out onto circuit. He drops the ball there.
Yeah, that's the only problem, isn't it? Getting offline, of course, all of the water is going to be in that patch where Dylan Tan's tried to fire one up the inside, slightly misjudged the braking zone there, and finds himself taking a shortcut through the chase. Big time loss. Of course, Pirellis will have picked up lots of dirt and grime to bring back onto the racing circuit, so take a few corners to clean those up as well, so New Earth can have a little bit of a kind of breathe, I guess, and a sigh of relief and get back underway. Meanwhile, Prendergast makes up a position on Carter in the number 9 Lexus. Just behind there, fresh out of the FIA Motorsport Games, is Prendergast, so looking really competitive here today, just inside the top 20 there, seeking to get more positions up. Raza in the number 17 BMW next on his radar, and I said earlier on in the broadcast, the Aston Martin is quite a favourable chassis in the wet, and Sam Gaskell proving just that as well, now up to a nearly a 20-second lead over Iverson and his teammate in the Track EU cars behind there, charging as much as they can, but just can't match the pace of this man at the moment. Gaskell has run, I would say, Mike, a near perfect kind of first half of the race at this stage. Kept it on the straight and narrow, kept it out of trouble, but at the same time, he's been aggressive with, you know, trying to get through Dylan Tan, and Dylan Tan managing to put himself in a wall, I can only assume, at some point. There hasn't been a penalty for Gaskell given, so can only assume that was a driver mistake, gifting Gaskell the lead, and he's just kind of driven away into the sunrise with it so far.
Yeah, this is a driver that I think is one to watch out for in the future. Now, obviously, I think the name that everyone knows quite well is Sam Gaskell. Of course, drove in multiple karting championships in real life, and has made his mark on the esports scene as well as an absolute legend. And he's looking to extend the glory tonight in first position over the rest of the Community World Challenge field. 20 seconds is the gap, and his only other competitor, as you had mentioned, Dylan Tan, making a mistake in the first half of the race, really just allowing Sam Gaskell to stretch his legs out and extend the lead to the best of his ability and try to hold on to it, at least for the near future. His last lap was a 2:09.0, which is significantly quicker than pretty much everybody else on the field. He is the quickest driver on track with the fastest lap of a 2:08.7, but overall, as of the previous laps, he's still the quickest driver out on track.
Yeah, very quick laps coming in from Gaskell. And an interesting thing to note as well, remember, 3 mandatory pit stops on the cards for the drivers tonight. We aren't enforcing when they take them. There's no refueling kind of aspect or tires needed to be taken. We just need to see the drivers come down the lane, stop in the box, and out they go again. And equally, no stint timer either. So it kind of blows the strategy wide open in that aspect. You know, most races limiting to the hour or to the 65-minute mark as they make their way through the kind of sprint race, kind of half endurance that we've got here today with 90 minutes when we began. And it, you know, it creates that kind of unknown aspect of what drivers are going to do. We know typically in an hour, you normally split it down the middle. You take half the fuel at the start, half the fuel for the end, and a fresh set of tyres to boot. But today, with the weather, as Mike, you alluded to earlier on in the broadcast, being a big factor in today's race, it's certainly kind of thrown the curveball out there. We've got top 4 drivers still yet to make a pit stop, so can only assume those guys elected to take a full tank of fuel. Of course, that will be running out roughly in the next 10 minutes or so, depending how conservative, again, they've been, depending which ECU map they're using. Maybe some drivers electing to use the wet map earlier on when the track was flooded to try and get the most out of the car, as we see Philip Brewster make up a position on Abramov in the number 4 Symphony of Pistons entry. Not made too hard once again. Abramov really choosing his fights today, I think, on this one, Mike. Just kind of both fights we've seen with this driver been relatively simple. Down the conrod, a little lift, through goes the other car, and everybody's back on their way again. Relatively unfazed, and low risk is the main thing, I think, with this one.
Yeah, really timing his overtakes to perfection so far, and as it stands, I think that shows in his positions gained. 9 positions overall have been gained for Philip Brewster. Make that a 10th, as a lot of drivers are electing for their pit stop. In fact, taking the words right out of my mouth, I was going to say Jardier, who was stuck behind the other drivers, I think he should have come in for a stop this lap, and he does. He does have to take that 5-second penalty, of course, after receiving that for causing some form of collision. However, it isn't going to thwart him too much. He had about a 6-second gap to the car behind the car that was behind him. Therefore, he should just lose 1 position from that penalty. And as we re-look here, this is Kieran Prendergast, who is a bit not bottlenecked. He's actually being a bit of a bottleneck, as Ollie Raza side by side with Aiden Carter down the mountain stretch, and it is going to be Aiden Carter's game. Ollie Raza down to 13th position, but still on the ascent up the mountain. He is going to be looming in the mirrors, not far behind, waiting for any mistake from any one of these drivers.
Yeah, Prendergast on a bit of a charge, already caught Raza within a few laps, and through he goes, bringing with him, of course, Carter in the number 9 Lexus, which I didn't even realize was on the grid today, Mike, if I'm honest, amongst the manufacturers. And that's the magic of course, the custom BOP. It brings these kind of oddball cars in that we don't normally see all too much of. We spoke earlier about the Honda, of course, being made competitive. Even speaking to the Odyssey Racing League team manager, and you know, he mentioned how both drivers were able to pick their own cars. So Chan going with the BMW, and then of course the Honda on the flip side in that camp as well. So 2 different cars to set up and manage, but it's the magic of BOP, isn't it? It brings in those kind of oddball cars that we don't normally see all too much in the phase of it, and the BOP making the Honda relatively competitive today. A few drivers electing to take it. 19 kilos lost off the Honda, and 16 kilos lost off the Lexus. So possibly why some drivers have elected for those cars today.
Yeah, certainly doesn't hurt, that's for certain, as having a little bit more of a competitive field and a more even field is always welcome, and that's one of just the absolute treats of balance of performance. And yes, it's controversial, yes, some people don't like it, but at the end of the day, you can't make everybody happy. You can only do to the best of your abilities what you can. And for example, you'd mentioned, 16 kilograms off of the Lexus. In comparison, you have the Ford Mustang GT3, which is up 21 kilograms from where it normally is, and it's still the 2nd quickest car in a straight line, which obviously, yes, ballast doesn't affect straight line speed that much. We do have a nice little scrap, though, ahead of us here. We're currently looking at 17th position with Neuwirth, Morat, as well as Konchik as they go side by side. That's going to be the number 11 of Morat. No, the AMG in a little bit deep there. His best Sum 41 impression from Milana, excuse me, 3 wide as we go down to the first corner. Someone's going to have to give, and it looks like everybody does pretty much. Damian Konchik in 15th with Yaroslav Honzik in 16th behind. We have Milana in P17 with Neuwirth in 18th and Lawrence in 19th. But that is not, any one of those positions I just said is not going to be settled by any stretch. As we go towards Quarry Bend, are we going to shake up a little bit? No, we stay as is. However, it's only for now.
Big slide off the corner for Jaroslav Honzik. That's brought Konchik back into it as they go into the cutting. Everybody needs to check up and pick a line and stick to it. Otherwise, we're going to go 3 wide through there, and that's not going to be a pleasant experience either. Maulana coming under fire from Newworth. Lawrence in the back with front row seats to everything, kicking off just ahead of him. And meanwhile, Honzik's got a bit of breathing room. He's escaped up the road by a second or so while these guys have been squabbling their way across the mountain. It's a 4-car train, and this is essentially for P16, but everybody battling their absolute hearts out as we see a penalty flash up for Maulana there. Very quick indeed on the 5 seconds. I'm wondering if that's from an earlier on incident or maybe from the incident that we've just seen on the broadcast.
Yeah, more than likely an earlier on incident, I would presume, but we will see when we get that update relatively shortly. The battle rage is on here, and yes, Yaroslav is in this fight, but he also doesn't want to be by any stretch of the imagination. He's kind of caught up here in a scrap that he just isn't a part of. I mean, you can see he's up in pit stops ahead of, as well as Newworth, who is up a pit stop as well. There is car 889 and 63 on lap 24, the 889 receiving that 5-second penalty. So that actually was from the previous lap. And oh no, Newworth is around and having a picnic on the exit there of the chase. The number 63 QRT needs to rejoin. Got to be very careful. Does keep his head on as much of a swivel as he can, and very good heads up driving from the cars around him to slot himself back into the circuit.
Indeed, good heads-up driving indeed, and fingers crossed some of these guys have got a spotter maybe with them today as well to try and keep the eyes peeled for any incidents across the mountain. Update towards the front of the grid though, Sam Gaskell coming down the pit lane, the Track EU Mustangs staying out, yet to serve a mandatory pit stop off their tally of 3. Dylan Tan has managed to find his way back up into P4, and Stubenrauch, after the 15-second penalty, slides down to P7, so he's got some making up to do in the latter half of this race. Just over half an hour on the clock to go. Track temperature is up a degree. Wind speed has dropped ever so slightly down to 7 kilometers in the server. However, rain is due again in the next 10 minutes according to the forecast. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. But it is Iverson out front in the number 86, 3.6 seconds to the good over his teammate, the other number 77 Track EU car. Sam Gaskell though 28 seconds to the good behind them. But it is worth noting that mandatory pit stop still looms over these Mustangs, and whether or not, Mike, they're going to come down the lane, and maybe they're just going to come down once, do a full service, like I said earlier on, and then just come down for a stop and go for the other 2, and just try and minimize that loss of time by, you know, wasting time servicing the car 2-3 times over, rather than just doing it all in one hit and then just kind of blipping in and out very quickly, and maybe even consecutive laps. Who knows?
That's actually one of the possibilities that Ali Raza was discussing, to be completely honest. He said, you know, early on, you might see a lot of the people further back in the runnings go for an early pit stop and then elect for a late pit stop 2 in a row, 2 laps in a row. We're not seeing that from some of the back runners. We're seeing that from the front runners, to be honest here. And Iverson, of course, is our leader at the moment, but they are out of phase right now with Sam Gaskell. So Sam will retake the lead of this race when all is said and done. Naughtons is in for his stop on this lap, and then we'll see Iverson presumably in the next 10 minutes. But I will say is I don't like stopping in the dry. These are the fastest lap times that we've seen in the servers so far. We know the rain is going to hit in another 10 minutes. If you have the fuel to make it to the point where drivers are going to be driving slower around the circuit, you might as well. You might as well wait for the rain to fall before you come in for your next stop, because you're actually just going to lose a couple, maybe second, maybe you'll lose you're going to gain, I should say, maybe a second, maybe 2, you know? I mean, at the end of the day, it's nothing to shake a stick at, but it's certainly still welcome for doing absolutely nothing but waiting a little bit longer. So I think that's sort of the strategy that Iverson's going to be having, as well as, I was going to say Sam Gaskell, but Sam's already pit when they were in the dry and did elect to take a new set of boots as well. So new wets on for Sam Gaskell. Naughtons also electing for a new set of wets. And Sam, to be fair, was pretty safe. He had a good gap to the rest of the field around him, so he doesn't have to worry too much about track position. But he did, interestingly enough, come out ahead of Dylan Tan. However, by a minute. Dylan Tan 1 minute behind the man that he was once leading at this stage of a race.
Yeah, and that gap's only opened up, hasn't it? I mean, Dylan Tan pit stop was a rough kind of 1 minute 39. So, I mean, logically, the gap should be a lot smaller. But Tan, of course, being offset with the track position, finding himself in and amongst battles that he shouldn't necessarily have been in had he not had to take the lengthier pit stop for the damage earlier on. So, Dylan Tan, a big ask ahead of him to try and propel himself up towards the top end of the grid. Of course, it is a team effort. We keep talking about, you know, the overall kind of aspect of who's going to win the race and, you know, who's leading who. But it is, of course, the points combined at the end that net themselves a place at the SRO Awards. So at the moment, I think if the math is still right, Mike, it still looks like the Track EU Mustangs are going to be the highest scoring cars at the moment. However, under half an hour to go, weather is on the change once again. Anything can happen, so that could all be on its head in the next 27 minutes. We'll have to keep you tuned and updated. It was looking like possibly Gaskell and Stubenrauch also set for a good haul of points until the 15-second penalty came in for Stubenrauch as well. So it's all a bit up in the air, where it's all a bit of commentator's math, I think you called it earlier, Mike, and it's quite a good phrase, you know, trying to do this thing on the fly and bring you updates as we get it. But at the moment, I think the Track EU cars are set to be the highest scorers so far.
It is, yeah, it's going to be pretty close. As actually, I mean, I will admit the penalty from Stubenrauch, despite the fact that he had about a 15-second penalty, it's only put him back one position overall. Or two positions overall. No, 2 positions overall. So that will, in fact, yeah, bring about a 5-point difference, 6-point difference, something like that by the end of this race, but still with a few more drivers ahead. Anything can happen in racing, and it normally does. And one of my favorite things to say in racing is practice your pit entries. Now, we've seen that these drivers clearly have practiced their pit entries, but we still have 2 more stops to go for a lot of these drivers. And that can mean one thing, and one massive thing at that. That's a stop-go 30 penalty. If you're not careful with your pit entry, especially with the rain coming in the near future here, about 5 minutes from now, we're expecting the showers to resume. And not only resume, they're supposed to come back with a vengeance as well. In fact, as I say that, do you see what I see?
I don't think I see what you see, Mike.
There's a little rain starting to fall from the sky. There's a much better picture of it right there. You can see the weather has decided to bless the rains down in New South Wales.
Very different to blessing the rains down in Africa today. Certainly lots of rain on the horizon. The next 3 minutes getting heavier as well, and then due to stop in the next 10. So it's very on and off at the moment. The track, in theory, shouldn't dry out, so the wet Pirelli should be the optimal choice of tyre for the remainder of this race. Lots of penalties cleared off from the left-hand side. You spoke earlier on just then about the stop-go 30. Of course, there's a big possibility even of getting a drive-through penalty if you're very, very hot into the pit lane. So that's also another possibility on that one. So lots of drivers have to be on their wits at the moment. They can't afford to drop the ball as they come back through the field. Prendergast, we saw him up just outside the top 10 earlier on before the mandatory pit stop was cleared from him. The number 10 now sizing up Abramov in the number 4 Symphony of Pistons Aston. And the SSRI car certainly looks very balanced in the hands of Prendergast so far. He's really found his kind of calling, I would say, in the Aston Martin. A couple of drivers, though, towards the bottom of the field have cleared their mandatory pit stops. The number 74 and the 296 both have ticked off all 3 of their stops, and that's indicated by the green box next to their race number. So look for lots more green towards the top end of the field, and that should give you a more accurate representation of who has where in their placings when the checkered flag comes down. Of course, a mistake there from Abramov. Off into the gravel he goes, pulling back on in front of the Honda. I think the Honda's possibly a lap down. There's not actually a Honda relatively close to this fight at the moment, so no harm, no foul really on that one. Dylan Tan next down the lane. He'll take another mandatory stop off his box, Mike, and that leaves him only 1 to go in the next 23 minutes.
Indeed it does, and one stop left, and the dry is going to be back as well. That's another thing, is within the next 20 minutes, we're expecting the rain to stop. So it really has played the variables, and any driver that didn't practice for the wet, which I'm assuming is honestly none of them. I would imagine everybody was aware of the conditions coming into this race, and therefore has put plenty of work in to account for all of the little tiny changes they're going to need to make in their setup. The toe, you know, and how the camber on the rear tires in particular, that was one thing I was hearing Andy and Ollie talk about, is they could get away, since it's wet, you can get away with a little bit less camber, able to put a little more traction down on the tarmac, and these are the little differences. And one thing that ACC in particular does so well, in my opinion, is all of these little things that you, the viewer at home, don't really get to see that often, and that's within the setup work and behind the all of the different information, the limited slip angle, the toe, the camber, the bump stop speed, the pressures as well. All of these little tiny factors play a variable in gaining thousandths of seconds around each corner, and thousandths, they add up into tenths they add up into seconds, and well, seconds, they add up into minutes. And Sam Gaskell, well, he's found himself with half a minute over the rest of the field, maybe due to those little changes.
Yeah, certainly doing lots of setup work along the way. It's one of the things we kind of forget about. Like you say, it's quite easy to overlook how many options are truly available on these cars, even coming down to things like anti-roll bars, the rake angle of the car affecting the aero balance of the car, which then in turn you tweak the rear wing to negate some of those effects. It's one big kind of juggling game, car setup, where you make one change in one area, you may have to offset that with a slightly kind of smaller change with something else, just to keep that balance of the car happy. And especially in these mixed conditions, as you alluded to, of course, less camber, less toe, kind of putting more kind of tire carcass in contact with the road. And you know, treaded tires especially need to be in contact with the road to disperse water and throw it up from underneath and out through the back end of the car. Otherwise you get a build-up of water, and that's when you start, of course, aquaplaning, and you get some very nasty handling properties along the way as well. So lots of juggling to do, and not only with the weather and the pit stops today, but also car setup. Philip Brewster on your screen at the moment, another driver to clear all of his pit stops, so he's clear to go to the end. And logically, with the fuel tank size in the Bentley, shouldn't be another trip down pit lane for him.
Nope, should not. Ideally, obviously, no scheduled stops remaining. Unfortunately, it could change if not careful, but I don't expect that from the Harkin Racing here, who has just been, again, another driver. Hasn't really put a foot wrong this race, has been on top of things. 8 positions gained so far, and still more to come, of course, because there are drivers in front that have not made their stops. Biggest gainer at this phase of the race, Philip Brewster, down in 12th position, 8th position, excuse me. Pendergast, my apologies. Kieran Prendergast is the driver that has 24 to his name in terms of positions gained. Started all the way back in 37th, excuse me, for the SSRI team, and has just climbed and clawed and tried to go as far as they can up the field. Still has one stop left to go, but the home stretch is in sight here for the SSIR team, or RI.
Yeah, you've just got to come down the lane, stop, and off you go again, and try and retain that track position at this late stage of the game. And again, lots of drivers ahead of him will still have pit stops to make. Just looking at the list, Razor's got 2 more to tick off. Stubenrauch 2, Chan, Znotins, Iverson, and Gaskell all still have 2 stops. The majority of the field at this stage, only 1 more to go, and Lawrence also ticking off his last mandatory stop. Just run some commentators' maths, Mike, while you've been talking there, to try and give you an update on the point scenario. So if the checkered flag dropped right now with Stubenrauch in 5th, Sam Gaskell at the head of the field, it would be 152 points to those guys. And if the checkered flag again dropped right now with the Mustangs for Track EU, where they're currently situated 2nd and 3rd, it would be 153 points. They would win by a singular point. However, on the flip side, if Stubenrauch can make up 1 more position to Chan, that's going to be 155 points to SPQ, which means they would win by 2 points. So we're literally speaking of 1 to 2 points margin between winning and losing a spot at the SRO Awards this year.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible, and the nerves just must be gutting for some of these drivers. The BMW of Chan is kind of going to be the thorn in the side for Stubenrauch, because that could make the difference of qualification for the title or not. Absolutely amazing closing prospects here for the next 18 and a half minutes ahead of us. Prendergast in the SSRI car, trying to make as much work of the field. He doesn't care too much about the title right now. It's all about the track position and trying to gain as much as he can, to gain as many points as he can as well. But with Philip Brescia ahead, our current one of our biggest gainers, but also one of the drivers on the lead strategy right now, and that's going to be the biggest problem for Brescia, or for Prendergast, is just the fact that this isn't really his race. He's currently sitting in 13th and needs to catch up with Borchers in the BMW, but there's a car in between. There's a bit of time, and right now Prendergast just kind of has to stay awake to stay alive, with Neuwirth behind in 14th right now. A decent margin to him as well. Oh my goodness. That Honda NSX getting a little bit loosey-goosey here on lap 31, but thankfully, what a save there from, who is that anyways?
It's Chris Warner in the background there. Of course, remember you had the Austin Powers moment, parked sideways on the descent to the mountain. That's where he's ended up. Currently down in P31 overall, so not for position on your screens, but very well held was that slide out of McPhillamy Park. It's quite a scary place to drop the car, especially with the curb. The curb kind of rises up, and it really upsets the balance of the car. If you hit that wrong, that can be very detrimental indeed, and not a lot of runoff to the left. It's an instant wall. To the right, you've got a bit of grass and gravel, and you're probably going to find the wall either way you go. So certainly drivers maybe need to turn the limits down at this point. There's a lot to lose in this late stage, under 20 minutes to go now, and the worst place you can lose any kind of time is at this stage. You don't then have the 90-minute window to make it up. If you've had any problems, Mike, you want them to be in that first kind of 5 to 10 minutes, like we've seen with Dylan Tan. You've then got, an hour 20 to undo everything and try and get yourself back towards the front.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it as well, we were just taking a look at our currently running in 5th position, Stubenrauch. He's a driver that you had mentioned there has got to keep everything within the limits. Stubenrauch is pushing the limits right now, and we saw that briefly where he got very close to his back end, clipping the wall on the top of the mountain, but thankfully he kept it out of danger for now. But he's a driver that kind of has to get the hurry up on. I don't want to say there's nothing to lose, because that would be a completely untrue statement for Stubenrauch, but you need to make calculated risks right now if you're in that 35 car, because what you have is not enough. In order to win and get the title on the SRO stage, you have to get ahead of Kobe Chan. And that there's no debating that. And Kobe Chan actually has only come in this lap, so that's going to even things out. Kobe will give that position to Stubenrauch for now, but that is going to be kind of Stubenrauch's, I don't want to say, he has to have a fire lit under his seat right now if he wants a chance to gain into the top 4 to secure himself the tie between them. Would that be tied, or would they be in the lead? See, this is where the commentators' maths get real interesting, and I get very excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of commentators' maths to begin with. I think it was, if it finished with Stubenrauch in 5th, Gaskell in 1st, it was 152 to Track's 153, with Stubenrauch ahead of where he is now, so up into P4 where Chan currently sits. SPQ would win by 2 points, so it would be 155 to 153. So, like you say, Stubenrauch has to get that fire lit, but it has to be a conservative fire. It has to be a, like a damage limitation almost kind of fire. He has to get a move on, but not risk the car all too much, as we see a hip and shoulder check there from Breister on to Borchers, I think, in the number 97 BMW, and Prendergast behind looks to try and capitalize as they come down the start-finish straights. Has a look into turn 1 alongside the BMW. Both drivers getting it checked up just about, and it's another 2-for-1 loss that we've seen the wrong way around, that we keep seeing all too much in this race. One driver gets past, it opens the door to another one. I think Prendergast, a little hip and shoulder check on the outside of turn 1 as they began the run up Mountain Straight.
Yeah, no harm, no foul for these drivers to be found, though, and with 14 minutes before the Community World Challenge comes to a conclusion, Well, Braish has done all that he can do, to be honest, in terms of strategy. It's just all about getting the lap times down now and staying alive for lap to lap, because that's all you can really do. The hard work has been done, and it's time to let the strategy play into fruition. Dylan Tan, he's done quite a lot of hard work himself. However, he's also made the work a lot harder on himself than necessary. With a spin early on, he's found himself in 7th position for the 144 behind Kobe Chan. And this is huge. If Dylan Tan can overtake Kobe, what is this going to do for Justin Stubenrauch? Because this already is going to be playing havoc on the lap times of the BMW. The number 12 doesn't really want anything to do with this, to be completely honest. They just, I don't want to say they want to let this fight go, because that would also be the incorrect look to it. They're just kind of stuck in a bad situation, I would say, if you are Kobe Chan right now, where how do you benefit? How do you gain long term when you're getting pressured from behind from 2 different drivers and 2 different strategies?
Yeah, it's a real hard one, isn't it, for Chan to manage? I mean, I'm always with the aspect of if one driver is significantly quicker than myself, I don't want anything to do with them in a fight. It's quite obvious it's going to happen eventually, but you're just delaying the kind of inevitable by that stage. Of course, Kobe Chan was in last lap, so we don't really have an accurate lap time comparison to give you currently. But Dylan Tan did run a 209.7 last time by and closed up quite quickly to the back of Chan. Of course, has to get past him in order to have a stab at Stubenrauch as well towards the front end of the grid. And still the top 4, Mike, still with 2 pit stops remaining. So I can only imagine these guys are going to be in a blink of an eye. They're going to be back out again, and they're going to do that twice over, because in theory you should be able to go to the end on what fuel you put in on your last pit stop. And the first of drivers to clear all pit stops on the road at the moment is Rados in P9 in the number 82. Of course, Honzik just ahead, still yet to clear his stop. 12 seconds to the good over the number 82, so that position should switch back around. It's about 40 seconds to come in the lane, stop in your box, and leave again for a rough picture. So if you are trying to work out gaps, 40 seconds is probably the number you need to be measuring right now.
Yeah, give or take. 27 seconds stationary is to be expected if you're just taking 1 liter of fuel. And most of these drivers are taking just that 1 liter of fuel. Down towards the end, as you had mentioned there, of course, yes, they should be good on fuel towards the end, except obviously for the drivers that have only made their 1 stop. Maybe they need to top up, maybe they don't. We'll see. Either way, Dylan Tan, the fastest driver in a straight line, that is. This is the fastest car down the Conrad straight, in for their final stop of the night, and Dylan Tan seems to have nailed the markers there. But that was a question I noticed in chat, is the straight line speeds of some of these cars, and why don't we talk about that briefly? As I mentioned, Dylan Tan, the only driver actually into the 281s. He is the quickest in a straight line, 281 kph for the AMG. Behind that, Sigurd Revzik in the BMW at 279, tied with Dobos in the Aston for 79 as well, and then 78 for the Ford Mustang GT3 in 4th. And of course, how could it not be a top 5 in terms of straight line speed without mentioning the Lexus? That's going to be 5th quickest at 278 as well. Most cars settling around that 277 to 278 mark. The McLaren, a little bit slower, 275, interestingly, down the straight, which normally you'd expect that to be one of the quickest in a straight line.
Yeah, quite a low-slung sports car. The McLaren, normally very aerodynamic based, good in a straight line, so to speak, on that one. And Dylan Tan's worst nightmare has just happened currently. Cleared the last of his mandatory pit stops, and Philip Breitster in the number 25 has made his way through up into P9 now. So Dylan Tan down into P10. He's now going to have to look at the back end of the Bentley as they rise over the mountain on that one. Of course, Breitster tires are going to be slightly more up to temperature as well. Dylan Tan cruising down the lane, having to stop, get back going again. That's going to lose crucial temperature out of the core of the Pirelli. So it's going to take Tan a lap or so to get back into it, and in the next 10 minutes or so we are expected to see another shower as well, just to round out this evening's of racing. But under 10 minutes to go now. It's that crucial area, isn't it, Mike, where you get a little bit lazy as a driver, a little bit kind of defocused. You've been running now, of course, for an hour 20 solid. Some drivers may have prepared more fluids than others to take on board during this race. And, you know, that's when focus levels start to drop and silly mistakes start to happen. And when I say silly mistakes, I mean, you know, like mistakes you'd never make in a million years. But because of the pressure of what you're racing for, the field that you're in, the circuit that you're at, it's all too easy to drop the ball. And then you find yourself in a worse scenario than where you were just 30 seconds prior.
No, exactly. This is one of those circuits that the slightest little lapse in judgment and you could be headfirst into a barrier. It's just they're never far away on this circuit at all. And on any part of it either. We see it now, final stops being made from some of our drivers. Actually, that might have been Stubenrauch in the Aston Martin coming in for his penultimate stop as well. Which we have some questions being asked in chat. Is anybody on dry tires? The short answer to that is no. Nobody is a nut that is crazy in a coconut to be doing that because the track is still wet. Yes, the sun is out. The conditions are a nice 20 degrees Celsius ambient, 22 degrees track temp. Dry line is forming, but the track still considered to be wet. Taking dries would be a bit much of a gamble. Unless you're Kieran Pendergast, maybe you take dries. Maybe that's what he needs to gain the last few points. I don't know, but anyway, or Stubenrauch as well could maybe elect for dries. It'd be risky, but you can still see there's stationary water offline. So you'd have to be tiptoeing around at your absolute best behavior. And on the mountain, it's just not really viable.
It's going to be very risky, isn't it? I mean, as soon as you come out of the pit lane on dry tires, they're going to lose all of that temperature straight out of the core. They're going to fall under the magical pressure window that they need to be in, and that's when you're going to kind of undo all of your hard work. As we see Stubenrauch with probably a conservative pit entry, I would say. Flying formation brings in with him Thomas in the background as well in the number 28 teammate, of course, to Prendergast on his drive back through. I think some people in the chat have noticed Dylan Tan's car is on dry tires, but with the pit stop time and what I'm seeing in my game, he's certainly still on a set of wets, so I'll quash that rumor instantly at the moment. Flying formation, though, for the Odyssey Racing League team, we've got Rados and Chan finding themselves together on the Conrod Straight. Both drivers electing to, of course, clear their mandatory pit stops by now. So, again, they can go until the end, and I don't think it's going to be enough with a P7 and a P8. Just running the quick commentators maths, it's 119 points for these guys. So, of course, the Track EU team, 153 if the checker flag was to drop right now. And, of course, Stubenrauch still yet to clear one of his mandatory stops. So he does have to come back down the lane. And Ryan Gill telling us something very interesting in our ears there. Mike?
I don't buy it. I'm just gonna be honest.
I don't think
that's
the time was long enough, was it?
He did not take tires in the stop, and I think it is just a visual bug that is being represented out there, that he has that little yellow mark on his tire. I'm looking at my game. I don't see the little yellow mark in my end, and it sounds like, I think, yeah, that is just a bit of a visual bug. Lap times are exactly the same as the drivers around him, therefore, almost certain he's on wet. See, he hasn't put it into the wall yet, so that's another good sign.
Yeah, just quickly skim through my game with the HUD on as well, just to double check. Everybody out there at the moment is on wet tyres. Sam Gaskell clearing his last mandatory pit stop. Track EU Racing Team both coming in flying formation to clear their last mandatory stop as well, which will leave Stubenrauch in the number 35, still yet to come down the lane for his. Abramov still yet to clear his as well. And I think other than everybody else that has essentially retired from the race, taking no further part, everybody is clear other than 3 drivers that you see on the left-hand side, which is now 2 drivers. So the number 35 and the number 4, last ones to come down pit lane. Under 5 minutes to go. Heavens are due to open again in the next 3 minutes or so, very briefly, which should keep the track nice and wet to see these treaded Pirellis all the way through to the end without burning up and possibly risking potential punctures. But Sam Gaskell, this man on your screen right now, has had the race of his life, hasn't he, Mike? He's gone like a scolded cat from the get-go. He's just leaps and bounds above everybody else, and a real up-and-coming kind of name in the world of esports. I think if my memory serves me correctly, only in the last year or so, I want to say, has Sam Gaskell been a part of the ACC realm. You might, be in a better position than me, but I don't remember him being one of those household staple names in the early days, and he's certainly risen up through the ranks in the last year and a bit.
Yeah, he's definitely been around for a while, but all in terms of being the star of the show and being as absolutely dominant as he truly is, yeah, he's come into strides recently, participating in multiple different championships and showing that he is one of the best, and in every condition as well. That's one of the things, right? We've seen every condition tonight, and we know that Sam Gaskell has managed to survive all of it. There's his teammate, Steuben Rauch, currently in what looks to be 7th position. It says 5th on the HUD. There we go. It has updated. He is down in 7th right now with Kobe Chan ahead and Andrew Rados in front as well. He needs these 2 positions, and he needs them within the next 2 laps. And even that, would he be still 2 points behind if he finishes in 6th? I think so. So it's going to be it's a tough effort ahead here for the SPQR team, and a gutting finish more than likely for them. But again, we talk about one of the other newer teams that is new to the... Oh, goodness! Oh, my! Whoa! Okay, the Kobe Chan looped around. Steuben Rauch finds 2 positions for free. Can he catch Rados? Did he all of a sudden, has he gotten himself into a position where he can actually do this for his team? The fire has been lit now. Justin Steuben Rauch, can we just get confirmation that if he finishes in 5th, that will be enough? Because I am now very excited.
No,
I think he does need 4th, though.
He needs 4th. I'm running the commentator's math, Mike, as you've been going there. If he finishes where he does now in 6th, it's 149 to the 153. And if he gets Rados, it only promotes him 1 point away from the Track EU team. They'll finish on 152 versus the 153. It'll be 1 point in it if the checkered flag drops right now. So he's not only got to get through Rados, he's got to somehow catch Thomas in P4. And I think 21 seconds, that's way too much to ask, unless there's a mistake coming out.
Yeah, and very unfortunate, I have to say, and it's just going to have to rely on a disconnect, to be honest, which you never want to say that. That's something that no driver ever wants to find themselves gaining positions for, but it's what he's hoping for, as well as the position over Rados. And Sam Gaskell, it is what it is at the end of the day. But all in all, it's just been domination from the Track.EU racing team. The 2 Ford Mustangs, new to the Community World Challenge, or new to the World Challenge format, as of course we had the VCO final last year. I don't remember them being in that race. That I feel like I would remember that name. But no, so new to the SimGrid community, maybe, or new to the bigger SimGrid communities out on circuit, and showing that they are one of the best in the house.
Absolutely so. Very dominant fashion so far from the kind of top 3. They've been gone since the green flag, and they've just driven off kind of into the distance, kind of leaps and bounds above everybody else. I just want to throw out some what ifs during the final dying stages as we head on to the last lap here. Well, that's a car in the on the exit of Murray's. I'm not sure who that was on the inside there, but they're back underway. No yellow flag being shown now on that one. Just want to throw a what if out there, Mike. What if Dylan Tan had kept P2 and shuffled the Track EU cars down a few positions? That would have been 74 and 70 points apiece, which would have put them 144 points, which means as it currently stands, it would have been a win to SQRT.
Wow.
And then on the flip side, what if Steuben Rauch hadn't got the 15-second penalty? Could he have been up there ahead of Rados, and that would have cemented that in there as well? So I love throwing the what ifs out there. I love speculating and spitballing ideas, and that's one of those things. What if today? That's all we can really say from it as Sam Gaskell begins his final run down the Conrod. The checkered flag will be out this time for the number 45, and what a great drive they've had for the last 90 minutes or so.
Certainly has been. Utter domination for Sam Gaskell. It's going to be a Grand Slam victory tonight. Well, actually, no, he didn't finish. He finished in second in quali with a first position in the race. Fastest lap in the server as well. One corner left to go for Sam Gaskell and the SPQR team. Now through Murray's and on to the start-finish straight. Sam Gaskell pulls off to the side to acknowledge his teammates, and he takes the victory here on circuit at Bathurst for the Community World Challenge. But that's not it. The talk of the town, the next driver to the line, is going to be Iverson in the number 86. Iverson with a bit of a bottleneck traffic ahead. Not going to be bothering him at all. They've done it all. They've managed to secure, presumably, the lead of the championship, and they will be receiving the trophy more than likely on the SRO stage. Now, did they run out of fuel, or are they just making it nice and drawn out for us? They want the photo finish with the teammate as both Naughtons and Iverson take the checkered flag simultaneously and take the victory overall in the Community World Challenge.
Fantastic drive from the tracky, you guys, right from the get-go. I speculated the Mustang, maybe not the best car to be driving in the wet, but you know, I've eaten my words tonight. Certainly well and truly a very good race. Thomas comes through in P4. That's the number 28 just behind. And I think Rados has done just enough to fend off Stubenrauch. 3.6 seconds to the good through the last timing gate. So Stubenrauch won't get the extra position. So by my quick commentator's maths on very provisional results, it's 153 points to Track EU versus 149 to SPQ. Came down to 4 points, Mike, in the end.
Absolutely incredible. And a hats off round of applause for both Sam Gaskell and Justin Stubenrauch, managing to put on the show, keep us on edge the entirety of the race. And again, we're just left with the what ifs. What if there wasn't a penalty? What if Dylan Tan didn't make the mistake? What if he could stay up there and compete with the rest? Unfortunately, he didn't. Justin Stubenrauch going to be kicking himself, but again, definitely deserves a round of applause. That's nothing to shake a stick at. The amount of talent on this field tonight was just incredible. And to see all 20 champions, or all 20 communities, I should say, coming out and battling it out tonight, 40 different drivers. This is what we're here for. Again, this is racing at its finest. It doesn't matter what position you finish in. Yes, it does to a certain extent, as Iverson and Naughtons are going to be receiving on stage a trophy, of course, for the SRO Community World Challenge. But beyond that, it's about the friends that we made along the way. And yes, that's cliche. Yes, that's cheesy. But any one of these 20 communities are going to pop up on your screen here shortly. I highly, highly recommend checking them out. No matter where you are in the world, one of these communities is going to be fit for you. That's the beauty of SimGrid, where we have champions from all over the world, and championships and communities and people that are just trying to show a little bit of fun. There are all 20 communities on screen right now. Each one of those, you can head on over to SimGrid and find out. And again, I could not advise you to do so more, because every single one of these communities has something that you're looking for, be it EU racing, be it NA racing, be it Formula One, be it ACC. It doesn't matter. These are the places where you can go and find more racing, and SimGrid, the home to do that as well.
Yeah, be sure to head on over to the website, thesimgrid.com, and excuse me, check out all the offerings from all the communities on your screen at the moment. And some names more recognizable than others, but all have been around for quite a while now. And like you say, Mike, everybody on that screen probably has something to offer someone that's in the audience right now. So if you are looking for ACC racing, thesimgrid.com is where you need to be. And you know, it's an honor to be able to be given this chance to cast over this tonight with you, Mike. And you know, it's about the friends, like you say, and all of these communities started from just that, didn't they? It's small group of friends, they branched out, they found other people with similar interests, and they've all come together to make this one giant community. Whether you're there for the love of racing, whether you're there for a certain person, such as the Jardia community, you know, you all have the same interest, don't you, at heart? You all love racing, you all want fair and hard racing, and that's exactly what we've seen tonight on the broadcast. And you know, all of these communities, fantastic in their own right on what they offer.
No, absolutely. And having the pleasure for have commentated for over half the communities on that list as well. You know, it's absolutely incredible coming from myself. I come from Trackalicious, one of the 20 communities out there on circuit. That's where I made my start as well. So, you know, it's not just the racing drivers that make their starts in these communities. It's commentators, it's stewards as well, as I'm sure Stefan was a steward for multiple communities as well as esports leagues as well. So it has a little bit of something for everything, does motor racing. And whether you're a behind the scenes person, whether you're a person that wants to show your face on camera or show yourself behind a car, these communities all have a little something for you. And of course, we got Toga in chat, we got ACM. We have all of these wonderful communities out there and community representatives as well. That is just incredible to see. And we are, of course, going to be having a word from some of our winners here in a little bit. From our provisional winners, as of course, all of the post-race penalties are still yet to be had. So all of the results that we are saying are, of course, provisional. And we will be seeing them finalized over on the simgrid.com within a little bit.
Yeah, provisional being the key word there, of course. Stewards may be looking into other bits and pieces, but again, the checker flag has dropped, and we've got a very different Mount Panorama being brought to you on the B-roll to what we just saw. You know, weather was something that was on your mind, Mike. The qualifying was relatively dry and clear. Lots of drivers really pushing the limits of their cars, and then, of course, we flicked over to the race day, and it was absolute chaos from the get-go. The heavens opened, wet tires got bolted on very quickly, strategy got thrown up in the air, and I'm sure car setups got thrown out the window very quickly in aid of a wet setup. But it was, of course, provisionally Sam Gaskell that took the overall victory, and nothing can take that away from him. But joining us at the moment, Mike, the Track EU team have joined us. Guys, congratulations on what was a very, very hard result. And you guys made me eat my words. I said the Mustang wasn't going to be competitive in the wet, and you certainly proved me otherwise today. How hard was that? Is probably the first question we're going to ask you.
Loris told me to do the talking, but it wasn't easy. But of course, Mustang isn't the best car to drive in the rain. But we had a really good setup that helped. Like it helped us feel comfortable with the car. And I guess we can say we maybe got also a little bit lucky at the race start. And from that point on, it was just, we were saying to each other, just head down, just drive fast, but don't over push it. We're keeping the gap, and sometimes, like, you know, increasing the gap. So we were just keeping our heads down, just driving as fast as we can in a safe manner, because we knew, like, there's no point of trying to chase down Sam, because, like, he's a really fast driver, and of course he's in a really fast car in the rain. So yeah, we kind of stick to that plan, and like somehow, some way, we didn't make any mistakes, and it all kind of came out with a good result.
Yeah, I mean, the best result is provisionally heading on into it. Of course, you guys are provisionally the championship finishers here and the leaders at the end of the day. Now, I did also, like we said, we just want to talk a little bit about these conditions, because what a crazy race that we had all in all, with the absolute torrential downpour that started off with a bit of a sprinkle-ish, a bit of a hard sprinkle, to be honest, and then of course went to the dry conditions. Everybody was aware of these very changeable, the 3 times weather conditions, as well as the very interchangeable. But did you guys practice for that extreme of weather? Were you expecting it to be as crazy as it actually was?
Yesterday, like, interestingly enough, this is my first race with Ford, and yesterday evening was the first time I even tried the car out in wet. But we had some pretty crazy weather like conditions in the practice area yesterday, so it really helped us prepare, and we knew that it's gonna be very, like, it will change a lot, and it's just that, as I said previously, just keeping that safe but fast approach, like kind of touching the limits and seeing how far you can push the car to go somewhat fast. But yeah, the practice definitely has paid off from yesterday. I'm happy we went into the practice area a bit earlier, because we stayed there for a good 6 hours, I think, because the rain was pretty harsh, and we needed to figure out also the setup. And we are really happy that it actually stayed wet the whole race, because the setup in the dry isn't as good as it is in the wet. So it was like a proper like wet setup, and yeah, like all the time we spent yesterday, it kind of came back, and then we're really happy about it.
Awesome. That is incredible to hear. Now, I did want to ask, as we do have Julian here as well, Julian Strausser, the team principal over there at track.eu. One of the things I was just curious about was how exactly you guys have prepared for this event, and all in all, like as a team going into this, what did it necessarily take, and how prepared were you at the end of the day? I mean, obviously saying the Ford Mustang was a little bit of a last minute decision, but through the past couple weeks and the spectacle of this championship as a whole, how's it been for you guys?
Well, I let Loritz and Christus handle this as they like. I did not try to impose anything on them, and I will say that my trust was not misplaced. They handled this beautifully. Everyone else as well, great racing, but yeah, Loritz and Christus, they both did the strategy all on themselves as well. Masterminds, basically.
Excellent. Well, I'll let them take that question then real quick if you guys want.
Yeah.
Not everyone at once.
Basically, yeah. It was as Julian said. Like we started preparing, and we tried to think, and we also consulted some people on what to do better, and it wasn't like it's only two of us. Like we had also some other help, and yeah, like really grateful and thankful for that too, because some certain people really helped us out a lot with the setup, with the strategy, and it's just amazing to see that it all just kind of paved out, and yeah, it's really insane. I don't even know what else to say.
No, I don't. I totally understand. And I guess lastly here, before I move on and hand it back to John here for the final, is Julian, I just wanted to ask you as well, is how impactful has SimGrid been as a whole to your guys' community? As of course you guys weren't in the previous SRO Community World Challenge last year, and seeing you guys out here this year and in such dominant manner, how has SimGrid been to you guys?
SimGrid has been great to us mostly. We have switched here from a competitor that I'm not going to name, and it has been 0 to 100 basically. The community around SimGrid is great. There's so many amazing drivers, so many amazing new people, new personalities that we were able to meet since we got here at the start of the year. And I think it is pretty much only thanks to SimGrid that we had this much growth in such a short amount of time, that we are even able to attract drivers on a huge level such as Loritz and Christens here.
So SimGrid, not only a racing platform, but also a good link-up tool maybe for getting new acquaintances and business partners in the world of sim racing, and certainly recruiting a few drivers to the team as well. Just before we let you guys go off for the evening, obviously big congratulations once again. Anyone else you'd like to thank while we've got you on air?
Chris, any thoughts?
Oh, I think we can also thank actually SimGrid too in this case, because like not every day like drivers like us, like maybe more up and coming and like not having that many opportunities to actually race and drive against drivers of these like this caliber that we had today in the race. So yeah, I think also big thanks to SimGrid for providing the opportunity and letting us, as you said yourself, letting us maybe show ourselves somehow out to the world. So
No, you guys did an absolutely incredible job out there tonight, and a congratulations to each and every one of you, the drivers especially, of course, everybody over at the track.eu. And on that, of course, Julian, I tell you what, why don't you close it off before we let you guys go here tonight? Where can we find you guys, and where can we get involved, and what exactly is Track EU all about?
Well, I'm glad that you asked. Track.eu is a community that is mostly focusing on being friendly, being open to everyone, new drivers and good and esports drivers alike. We're very helpful, especially to the newer drivers, to find their feet, to learn how to drive, learn basics of racing, like where to take the line, where to brake for a corner, basics like that, all the way up to an esports level, apparently, as we have established today. We can be found on SimGrid. We also have our own website, track.eu. It is in the name. Quite a giveaway. And we also have our Discord server, which you can reach either via SimGrid or by going to the website track.eu/discord.
Excellent. And that is tracc.eu for anyone curious, if you guys are looking out for that. But on that note, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you guys and congratulations. Go and enjoy the champagne.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Yeah.
As we have it, folks, that's going to do it here from the Community World Challenge, brought to you, of course, by the SRO Esports community. And of course, a massive shout out to everybody here at SRO. We also have AK Esports UK, as well as Fanatec Pirelli. Thank you guys so much for participating. And of course, SimGrid for hosting these wonderful events and hosting these amazing championships and allowing other communities to host amazing championships as well. If you are looking to become a community host out there, head on over to the simgrid.com. That is where you can find everything racing related, ACC and iRacing, and plenty of other games as well, and simulators, F1, and more, I imagine, to come in the future. But on that note, it has been an absolute pleasure. John Dalton alongside me here for tonight. I've been Mike Noss. I hope everybody has a lovely evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are in this fine world. Thank you, and good night.